Welcome to Kauffman Writes, the #1 place on the internet for creative writing, inspiration, discussions, strategies, and procrastination. But don't worry, I won't tell anyone. Welcome to the Saturday live stream reading critique show. I am so excited and pumped. We have a lot of stories in for you today. We have a number of stories submitted from last week. We have some from this week, and we'll try to see what stories that I can get into. So for today's show, before we hop into our live story reading, we can't call this a real creative writing show without our writing sprint. So unlike our other days, we're going to be starting with one 25-minute writing sprint. Now, let's say it's been a long week for you. Feel free to kick back as I write, and I'll write vicariously for the both of us as I work on Last Scarecrow, or get some writing done yourself, whether that's brainstorming, writing, or editing. The whole writing process counts. All right, and let me just, so if you want your story read, if you want me to add it to the queue, the ticker is at the bottom of the screen. So you can send a 1 to 5 page excerpt double-spaced to thecreativeghostwriter@gmail.com. Perfect. And then I'll add it right to the submission, the queue. Wonderful. So let me just hop in the comments. Mudzerker, welcome, my man. Andrew, welcome to the stream. Isabella, welcome. Excited to hop and read in both of your stories today. I'm super pumped. I've had fun reading both your stories previously, so those will be super exciting. All right, and let's see. If you're hopping in and you're watching this on the replay, let's say you were a little busy today and you weren't able to watch the live stream, don't worry, I got you covered. After the live stream ends, I go back and I do the time code and the chapters, so that way you can skip ahead to the point in the video that you want to check out. Or let's say you were doing a critique, or you got a critique on your story and you missed a part, you can go back to the point in the video and watch it over and over again for as much value as you need. So that's for all you replay fans. Hey, what's up, Joelle in the house? Welcome, Joelle and Haley. Haley, it's a pleasure to have you in here today. Welcome to the stream. All right, and what is a live writing show without our music, as y'all know? So I'm gonna queue up my writing sprint for the day. As y'all know, I'm deep in the mud with Last Scarecrow, doing very, very well. You know what? I've been like adding the summary to see if it actually like helps people like stick along as they want to kind of like catch up and where I'm at if they want to read with the story. So I was like, you can kind of see it. I'm like, I'm not sure if this is big enough. It might be too many words, but that's what we got. Let's see if I can blow it up a little bit, maybe. Okay. Only cut off a little bit, so I think I can make this work. To the nothingness. Perfect. So that gives me the synopsis and then what I'm at in my story. And let's see, let me hop back over in the chat. Haley, I finally had a free Saturday. Yes, wonderful. I know sometimes weekends can be so hit or miss for writers. Sometimes we got nothing planned, and then maybe we get to write the whole weekend, or maybe we get to procrastinate the whole weekend. Trust me, I've been there, done that. And sometimes we're super busy. I get it. I'll be here every Saturday, so always feel free to drop on by. Okay, so I got my story queued up, synopsis, and our current state. Oof, our heroes are in it. We're actually setting up I'm setting up the second half of our character's journey. Man, and I had to write down all the heroes I have in this scene. So I have the Last Scarecrow, I have Pebble the Pixie, Rest in Peace Crow. Oh, my favorite character, Crow. I'm going to be like resting in peace, my Crow, for like the next like 30 pages. And then we have Skunk and Otter. I think they're our first. I think they're my first female couple. I absolutely love it. I want to make sure that I represent all couple types in this story. I got Gore the bear, Stretch the snake, Maisie the squirrel, Mouse 1, Mouse 2, and my favorite little red dragonkin. I know, Isabella. I know. It hurt my soul just a little bit. It was the midpoint of the story. Oh, it was so sad. All the characters collided in the Colosseum, and the crazy rabbit struck down the crow while trying to kill the scarecrow. And in response, the scarecrow tried to save the crow, and his ability lit up, and he suddenly helped the crow remember who he was. And the crow remembered that he was finally the crow, the leader of the crow and all the birds before he died. Oof, so that was sad. So now our heroes are regrouping after this, and our scarecrow has been changed. Okay, so without further ado, let me hop straight into this writing sprint. 25 minutes on the clock. Music queued up. Let's go. That's sounding right. Our characters are trying to figure out what's going on next. I know, I've been crying all week over it. All right, and 25 minutes, and let's write. Yeah, by the way, if you missed out on the last couple screens, I finally introduced the nothingness. Right after Crow died, like a beam of light shot down from the sky and started disintegrating animals randomly. Kind of similar to what they did with the blip in the Marvel universe. I like how it looks right now, but I might play around logistically with how I want it to actually look and feel, so it feels a little more unique. And now now that Scarecrow and Pebble are kind of regrouping with all their new companions they've met outside the arena, as they're kind of fighting over what's been happening and what to do. All right, that was a good stopping place. Excellent. I'm like slowly making my way through the characters deciding to journey. I feel like this post chapter after the midpoint with the Colosseum is a lot of like, it's kind of like recapping and like figuring out like what heroes are going to join. And I think as I've been kind of like talking through the group in this scene, I think the characters that I'm going to keep have them journey. I'm going to have obviously Scarecrow and Pebble. Skunk will join them. Gore, Stretch, and the Dragonkin. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I think I'm going to have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 join them. I really like Audie because she's kind of a showman, but I have other plans for her. And then Maisie and the Mouse just kind of feel like supporting-ish characters. Maisie just kind of feels like she's like an antagonist, so we'll kind of see. We'll see how it works out. So, but great work. I hope y'all were able to get some writing done yourselves. Let's see. Haley, I decided to work on editing and I had to reread one of the saddest parts of my story and now I'm crying. Oh, I feel your pain. When I was working on the last Scarecrow scene, I want to say that was on Monday when I did the midpoint. It's like you guys can barely see me because my screen's smaller, but I'm pretty sure I was crying as I was writing it. And then every single day since, I'm like, R.I.P. Crow. We all get so attached to our characters that It just sucks. It sucks when like you have a good character and you know you have to kill them off because it's what serves the story best, even if you want to keep journeying with the character. I'm like, maybe I can bring in like Force Ghosts eventually. You know, I'll have a bunch of projection. That's what fantasy, that's what stories do all the time, right? Your characters are never truly dead. All right, wonderful. So let's switch gears. All right, 2:40. We're about 35 minutes in. So, perfect time to switch over to our writing show. I hope y'all are ready. We got some fun stories, some fun readings, critiques, excerpts, and all that jazz lined up. So, if you want an excerpt of your story read and or critiqued, send the excerpt to the creative ghostwriter at gmail.com. And then I need to pull up Gmail, make sure. Awesome. Perfect. Just wanted to make sure I got everyone set here. Beautiful. So that's there. Awesome. And by the way, if you're enjoying the show, or let's say you're enjoying the readings or the critiques coming up, I'm going to continue doing this as a free thing for the community for two reasons. One, I want to give writers opportunities to have their stuff read for free because I've always been a broke writer and I know what it feels like. Two, I enjoy the readings. It scratches my acting itch. So I always enjoy that. But if you're enjoying it, you have the option if you want to leave a tip. I threw down my Venmo and PayPal at the bottom. Totally no pressure. All right. So on to the live reading and critique show itself. Wonderful. So we have a bunch of stories queued up for today. Let's see. I need to change up my screen. So bear with me just a second so I can have the stories directly in front of me. Now, while I'm setting this up, let me just touch upon a couple of guidelines for the story readings and the submission process. So if you're I start receiving stories from January, like the day of the previous week's show up until January moments before the Saturday show airs. Once again, like you know how to send a submission. I basically queue all the submissions in an order based on first come, first serve. So generally I'll queue up the submissions. I try to get through as many of them as possible. And then whichever ones I do not get through, they just get added to the next week's show at the beginning of the queue. I feel that's a very fair way. And then starting from last week's show, I started adding a timer to them. So every reading and critique gets 20 minutes. Depending on the reading, depending on the story, sometimes I get to the whole piece, sometimes I don't. But I think that feels fair. And if it's a longer story, then I'll generally break it up into 10 minutes of reading and then 10 minutes of a critique. I feel like that way, so I can try to get through as many stories as possible. Let's see. And then in addition, the formatting. So the way that a lot of the stories are submitted, I know y'all submit them through either Word documents or Google documents. Sometimes for scripts, they'll be PDFs. Essentially what I do, if it's a Google Doc, that's fine. What I've been doing is I've been adjusting the formatting on it up to a larger font to Comic Sans, which I use on my normal story because according to Google, Comic Sans is the easiest font to read. So it's for your purpose, or that's for your benefit, so you can read along if you'd like. And of course, it's much, much larger than it actually is. So page counts are going to be completely off. So I wouldn't worry about what page counts are. And then join the critique. So once again, one of the coolest things about being involved of this type of experience is getting to have your stuff read. And once again, if you're listening to somebody else's story and there's something that like stands out to you, like something you really like, don't hesitate to drop a comment. It's always the coolest thing when you're having your story read and you're hearing things, especially from others, writers in our community that are standing out to people. So don't hesitate to drop a comment on something that you liked. All right. And I think those are the perfect ones. So on deck, I have Miss Isabella. Isabella, I got yours queued up first for the Lovespell murders. Let's see. So let me get this up. So I'm kind of changing up my screen a little bit so that way I can get these read. All right, bear with me just a second. All right, and then I think I dropped my timer. Perfect. And I think I got this all set up on my end. Thank you for bearing with me, friends. All right. I'm going to make sure, A, that y'all can see everything. All right, and I think I got this all set up on my end. Perfect. Let me throw up the screen. Share screen. Excellent. All right. And there we go. Perfect. So I got the story queued up. So as you can see, I started doing a I threw up my guidelines on the side just so you can make it so it's a little clearer to y'all what I'm looking for when I'm doing readings and critiques. Now, if I start highlighting something during the reading, it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just neutral. It's more a note for myself. So when I go back to the reading or when I go back to the critique, it's kind of like checkpoints for myself to be able to touch upon. Awesome. So I got the guidelines. I got the timer is set. So it's a 20-minute story critique timer. All right. And I think that will just be like that. All right. Awesome. And I got Isabella's all set up here. All right. And let me just hop back into the chat real fast. Haley, yes, mine was a character death too. Yep. Oh, it's always, I know, same with Crows. Crows was definitely a character death for the for a Scarecrow. It's an overcast day here in the Sunflower State. Mysterious ambience for a bit of romantic mystery. Perfect setting for your story, Isabella. And Atomic, oops, lost track of time again. How's everyone? Atomic, we're doing great. Welcome to the stream, my friend. You showed up just in time for the readings. All right, so let's hop straight into Isabella's. All right. All right. Reading number 1, the excerpt from The Lovespell Murders. At the far end by a door marked Exit, atop a cement ramp stood 3 statues, the unmanifest. That exit goes to the garage, Craig said, pointing to the sign. It's where the trailer dropped these off this morning. The code to enter it is on the other side of the store, on the outside of the garage. Dusty. That's this level's maintenance man. Wheeled these 3 down here on a dolly after they were dropped off. They were crated in wooden boxes. He kicked a loose plank with the tip of his gray sneaker, and they were padded with straw. Alexander and I spent the whole morning freeing them from the darkness. Thank you, Craig, Alara said. That was very informative, she said, looking pointedly at Perry. Her partner ignored her. Who's Alexander? He asked. I am, slid a smooth voice from behind them. Alara jumped a little at the unexpected sound and turned. She did not expect to see him ever again. But that was a dream, wasn't it? Alexander Kane, the curator said, approaching and extending his hand. Curator of the Museum of Light, Art. Plus, this is my mess you're standing in. Please pardon it. He smiled, shaking Perry's hand warmly. Not a problem, Perry said gregariously. Perry Lockhart. And you are? He said, turning to Ilara. Ilara Monroe, Manhattan PD, she said. He slid his hand gently into hers. It was warm and familiar. He smelled faintly of vetiver. He surprised her when he gave her a small squeeze and turned it to the side so he could study the small chain around her wrist. This is a beautiful thread, he said, gazing at the thin golden chain, then looking up at her, his lips neatly parted. Someone must treasure you very much. She blushed, confused. It was her golden chain, but it wasn't around her neck. How could... She took a wavering breath. Are you all right? Alexander asked in a low voice, concern in his cool eyes. She nodded and quickly retrieved her hand from his grasp. Yes, sorry, she said, smiling and taking a deep breath. It was a gift from someone from a long time ago. Perry glanced curiously between Alexander and Ilara and decided to intervene. We wanted to ask you about the break-in that occurred back in February, Perry said, glancing curiously between Alexander and Ilara. Alexander's demeanor shifted, becoming more formal. Of course, he said. You want to know if I suspect the photographs from the break-in were taken by the same person as the ones that featured in the Emerald Bayer this morning? Yeah, Perry said with a hint of disbelief. How'd you know? Because it's obvious to me that they were, Alex said. What makes you so sure? Perry asked. Alexander crossed his arms. Well, the photographs in today's edition of the Emerald Bayer confirm my suspicion. They were certainly taken by the same person, he said. If not the same person, the same camera, there's a slight blemish in the lens. Top right corner. Your forensics team should be able to identify and confirm it, if it will hold up in court. Of course, that would mean somebody at the museum lied about the break-in back in February, and our new director wouldn't like to hear that. He tisked. What about the break-in? Ilara asked, fingering the golden thread of the bracelet around her wrist. If it were Ricky, how did he get in? He entered through the garage. Here, Alexander gestured beyond the exit sign. Around midnight, using the correct code to open the door, which means somebody at the museum gave it to him. He would have found the first shipment of Harold Two Fist sculptures in much the same condition as these. He photographed them, and when he was done, fled, forgetting to arm the alarm behind him. That is why I called the police the next morning. Why did the museum ask Chief Griff to stop the investigation? Ilara asked. Alexander shrugged. Scandal is bad for business, especially if your new museum's director's time is spent feverishly applying for the lion's share of the more prestigious grants and hosting dinner parties for the wealthiest patrons. Elizabeth Montgomery, Ilara nodded. She had keenly followed Miss Montgomery's transfer to power at the end of last year. And she should be here to chase you both away. He glanced at his watch. In about 10 minutes. How do you know that? Perry laughed. Because Craig is about to call her and tell her you're here. Alexander smiled. He and I would like to keep our jobs. We enjoy them for the most part. But while Craig does that, and here he nodded at Craig, who began to thumb through his phone for the director's extension, I have something to show you. He pointed to the motif of 5 fingers extending from a center, which was woven of green grasses into the belly of the statue in front of them. Does that look familiar? He asked. No, Perry said, and Alara shook her head. Who is she? Ceres. Ceres, Alexander said. One of the unmanifest we unboxed this morning. Harold Two Fists' indigenous interpretation of the Roman goddess of agriculture, fertility, and grain. Go on, Perry said. Right. And again, Alexander said, gesturing to the motif replicated in beads and hung around Hercules' neck. Perry and Alara said nothing. What about now? He motioned to the 5-fingered motif pattern painted in red on Venus's deerskin tunic. Nothing? The detectives shook their head. Well then, buy us a few minutes, Craig. Upon quick steps, the 3 strode towards the far end of the basement, while Craig waited behind to inform Miss Montgomery of the detective's arrival. He retraced the path he had taken earlier that day. In the corner, with a single weak light pouring gold on their heads, were the first of Harold's confused children, the Greek gods and goddesses he had chosen to manifest upon the American prairie: Hermes, Selene, Apollo, and the Minotaur. The light glittered opaquely through large rectangular crystals of selenite Two-Fist had melted to make a statue of the goddess of the full moon. He dressed her in a tunic sewn from willow leaves and crowned with 2 deer's horns. Apollo was similar, dancing in light, his head, hands, and heart made of clear, blown glass. The outline of his torso, made from lengths of flexible metal twisted to create the outline of his chest, traced the muscles of his arms, give him nipples. He reached toward the pale halogen bulb as if it were the sun. Hermes, psychopomp and messenger of the gods, was made from the clay of the earth, to which all things return. He was painted white with a rough brush, and the gray earth and clay shone under the thick strokes. From his heels to his knees, his back, the backs of his arms, and his head were a headdress of bird feathers, blue jays and cardinals, hawks and eagles. The feathers of the humble house were his eyebrows, and upon these feathers he flew between the underworld and this one, and between this reality and the gods. But it was the simple mask which Alexander needed them to see, the Minotaur, which Harold had made of a coyote's skull and covered the right side with bison fur and the half-moon horn covering up. The other half he left bare, save the 5-fingered motif jutting from just above the empty eye socket. Alexander noticed a bit of plant material on the cement floor beside he nonchalantly covered it with his shoe, hoping the detectives didn't notice, and then motioned for them to gather around. Now, does it look familiar? He asked, indicating with his well-manicured hand the motif on the mask created with 5 pieces of metal sticking out from the brow bone of the Minotaur's skull. Christ, cursed Perry under his breath. It's the same pattern as we nailed to our victim's face. Ghastly. Alexander cringed. He turned to look at the mask. This is the Minotaur. It was the first of Harold's confused children. Are you familiar with the myth? He has a labyrinth, Perry said. Correct. In Crete, amidst the pounding waves of the Aegean Sea, there dwelt a creature of both myth and terror, the Minotaur, born of a union cursed by the whims of the gods. He was the progeny of a queen and a divine white bull. Half man and half bull, he was kept hidden within the depths of the labyrinth where the Minotaur hungered for flesh, his rage fueled by both his monstrous nature and the loneliness of his existence. Each year, the Athenians paid a grieved tribute to King Minos to appease his wrath, sending forth young men and women as sacrifices to be devoured by the beast. But a prince of Athens, was determined to end the suffering. He volunteered himself as tribute, vowing to slay the Minotaur and free the people from the cycle of torment and suffering. Theseus, Perry said. Correct, Alexander nodded approvingly. Theseus had strength matched only by his will and love. He had love. Guided by Princess Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos, he ventured into the labyrinth, and only the thread she had gifted her beloved. With each twist and turn, he faced the Minotaur's wrath, confronting the darkness that lay both within the creature and himself. He vanquished the beast in the beating heart of the labyrinth. Theseus and Ariadne fled Crete, their story sung across ancient Greece as a testament to the power of love to illuminate the darkness. But what of the Minotaur? Asked Alara. Alexander looked at her when he spoke. It was gentle. What of that poor creature, born of twisted desires, languishing in a prison of infinite twists and turns, hungering to consume that which would set him free? He raised an eyebrow. Harold believed that the Minotaur led the confused children, aching to be free from the depths of their confinement in the dream, to the waking world of reality. More of an anti-hero than a creature born of twisted desires, hungering to consume and destroy that which might set him free. And thanks to your dubious photographer, Harold's Minotaur seems to serve as some inspiration for your killer. Everyone who subscribed to the Emerald Bear in February caught a glimpse of this mask and the motif, Alexander said. Well, that narrows it down to half of Manhattan, said Alara. And reading. Wonderful. Really, really great work, Isabella. As always, I very much enjoy reading your storytelling. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So let's see. Let me get straight into it. Perfect. So let me get straight into this. So okay, so from a first glance, one of my favorite things about this is Greek mythology. So all your references to the Greek mythological universe, you already had me at a win. I was like, you're talking about like Hercules and the Minotaur. The Minotaur is like one of my favorite ones. Let's see, you talk about what were some of the other ones that I really, really liked. You mentioned a couple of them. I know you mentioned Ceres. I know there was one more. I'm going to blank. Hermes, Selene, Apollo, and the Minotaur. So you're doing a lot with Greek mythology in the story, and there's a lot that I'm really working. I would say purely on your world building is serving very, very well right now. The world building is probably the strongest part of this. And then in terms of character development, there's not, in terms of Perry and Alara's like character development, there's not really too much character development for them specifically. I think the only defining moment for Alara is really the necklace, or not the necklace, the gold band, which I think that's actually very interesting. And that tells me that that's going to be important at some point later in the story for her past. But I really like that. And I think that was one of the other moments that was super clear when she's meeting Alexander and he's shaking her and you could just tell he's kind of like, he gives off that like suave, creepy curator vibe. And I was like, yes, the gold thread. So that was absolutely perfect. Let me see. So those were things that worked very well for it. I know that you were saying that this was supposed to be a your thing of having this is kind of like a synopsis, or not a synopsis. It's kind of like an excerpt to share to kind of like sell the book, so to speak. So I think the strongest moments from this excerpt would be, I like their introduction. I like the introduction with this weird curator. He's super creepy. I like your use of Greek mythology. And I like how you're weaving how that's kind of weaved into the fabric of this like murder, of this mystery. And that's super, super cool. I think a couple opportunities. So I think the biggest thing that's probably limiting this right now is the dialogue. I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to there's a lot of ground that you're trying to cover with all the first there's two steps. So there's ground you're trying to cover with the descriptions where you're describing all of the different statues. And then there's a lot of ground you're trying to cover with each of the stories. And I can tell how important it feels because you want to describe the statues. You need to describe how it affects the murder, which is probably the main plot. And then you're also describing the stories because that's part of the flavor and context of this world. Let's see. Alexander came off as very suspicious to me. Just something about the way he talked and the way he's described actually leaves me very skittish. I completely agree. He's kind of like, I don't know if any of you ever watched Scooby-Doo, but he's kind of like that. He's like the creepy character that's introduced early on in a story, who it kind of seems like he's probably the villain, but then he might not be. But then there's enough red herrings. Like that's the vibe that he gives off. Let's see. So Isabella, I think my biggest piece of advice for this would be you do a lot of, actually I have a couple of things. So the first thing that comes to mind would be you have a lot of ground to cover with your dialogue and your descriptions about Greek mythology. Right now, it feels a little wordy because you're trying to cover so many different stories. And I think because of that, it could easily, well, I love Greek mythology and I love the reading experience. I think by doing I think you're trying to go a little too in detail to each of these Greek mythological stories. And what's happening is it could potentially pull the reader from the main plot, from the main thing that's happening, which is essentially the detectives investigating the statue with what's going on. So I think there's a couple of ways that you could go about it. I think you could either cut down in the dialogue and the description for both the description of the statues and or the description of the stories. If I were working on this, I would actually probably cut down and focus on one Greek mythological story. Obviously keep all the statues. That's cool. Do a little less description. And I would find a way to describe each of the statues in like 1 to 2 paragraphs. I think you spend anywhere between like 3 to 5 paragraphs setting up each of the statues. And well, that's cool. I want to know more about like the mystery. However, if the description of them is important and integral to the mystery, then we want to highlight that at some point within as a clue or as a mystery. Exactly. So like I think what would really work is I think by focusing on the Minotaur story, and I think by having that because the Minotaur is freaking cool. I think you could make like references to the other stories, but that way, because like you want to think about what do you want your reader to be focused on? You want them to be focused on the investigation, number one. And if the Minotaur story is central to the whole story, like you can touch upon other stories, but they have to be underlying, resonating within the theme of the entire story. Yeah, but I mean, like that's the thing. Like the scene that you have set up is actually super cool. It's just because there's so much. I don't want your reader to get lost because of too much description. Sometimes, like as writers, we always have to walk that line of we can't do too much, but we can't do too little. We have to do just enough so the readers can envision it, but not too much so they get bored. I know even like some of my favorite writers, like if there's like pages of description, I'll be like, all right, I'm just going to skip this. But I'm forgiving. Some readers will just quit the story altogether. So that would be mine just in terms of the description itself. I would recommend like figuring out like, okay, what's the main story, which sounds like the Minotaur is what you want to focus on and then go from there. So I think that would really help just in terms of cutting it down. And like, I know that let me see before I hop away. So I know that I changed the formatting of this, but let's change this back to, I think you had times. Arial's fine. So let's change this back. Let's see what it was. So even double spaced at here, this story is about 6 pages. Okay, that's actually not too bad. I would say as an excerpt, I would say get this down. Even 6 pages isn't horrible, but I would say maybe knock it down to 5 pages and prioritize the one story. Also, add something cool because this is such a cool scene the introductory, like what they see in the beginning, the exit goes to the garage. So they don't, and then he shows them the statues. I would almost recommend having the introduction to the scene being your description of the statues, because that is very unique. And I think that would that would paint an immediate picture for the reader going to the scene, being like, oh, what's this statue of this minotaur? Like, you could always like go into the storytelling on that after the introductions, but I think by setting up that description of the statues, what could actually serve very well for making the story sound and feel unique, especially if you're trying to sell it. And then let's see, I think Atomic threw in a good comment. Is it set in a certain time period? Now I know this is an excerpt, but if you're trying to sell this specific excerpt, I would probably add another additional description at the beginning, kind of setting the time period, setting up the world a little bit if you're wanting to use this as like a standalone excerpt. And you don't have to have that in the book itself, but you want some sort of like point for people who are just hopping into the story. Sometimes people will do like this is what happened so far in the story. I try to find a way to like add a paragraph of description in the beginning so readers can just hop into it and be like, okay, she's a detective. They're on the trail, and this is the first crime scene, or so to speak. So that would be my recommendation for that. But yeah, and you have once again, Isabella, you have some really great description. And the motif of 5 fingers. You have some really great description that you use throughout. The Greek gods. I kept highlighting all the Greek imagery because I love Greek mythology. Like, that is so cool that's ingrained into the story itself. And I actually like the description. I like the backstories of the characters. I think it's just too much backstory is the problem for the Greek mythology. But the character development for Alexander, perfect. Like the dialogue for them was great. I felt like that was perfect. Yeah, I think that's all that I got. I don't think I got as much personality from Perry in this scene. A little bit. I felt like it was a little bit more on Alara, but that was just kind of my takeaway from it. So that's what I got for you, Isabella. I hope that helped. I wanted to make sure I got through that. Wonderful. And let me hop back to the comments. He's got Secret Boys, actually. He's the romantic lead? Yes. Oh my goodness, he's the romantic lead. That's great. Oh my god, that's funny. I like, then that actually works if we're like suspecting that like something's like up with him. That actually works. Like that's great if he's the romantic lead. That's awesome. He has a clear personality from the onset, and I like that. I can pull back the descriptions. Yep, there's earlier of the second shipment statue set because that's where the only appearance. Yeah, I think you always want to think about, especially with mysteries, what's like, and this is something whenever I'm reading thrillers, what's the main mystery that you want readers to be on their mind, and then what are the clues that you want them to notice that are going to throw them off the trail. I think that's always a great thing to keep in mind, being like, okay, so I want them to think that Alexander could be involved, or I want them to think that somebody stole one of these statues, or whatever it is. And I think those things are great to keep in mind, especially with mysteries. I think I did the hard work. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's hard to write a man who's confident and in a prominent position and not make him sound like a snooty you did a good job with him, though, Isabella. Really great job. Yep. Agreed. Chat's agreeing. Nice descriptions. Do people jump into the middle of serials? I'm one of those people that has to start the beginning of any book or video series. Yeah, I'm the same way. If I'm like reading something for myself, I'm a completionist. I have to go beginning to end when I'm like reading for my own pleasure. Thank you. Yes, I need to uncreep Alexander and streamline. I actually like that Alexander is creepy. I like that. But if he's going to be a love interest, what you can do is start him off as the creepy guy, but then give him a save the cat moment. If you don't know Save the Cat, Isabella, just go Google the book and what a Save the Cat moment is. But give him a moment where he starts off creepy and then he does something specifically that makes the audience like him. I think him coming across as creepy works well for the mystery, in all honesty. But yeah, because you haven't gone too in depth into the story yet, that I think that's very easily doable. We'll let the uncreeping be his character development. He has a cat. He says it's like living with. You see, that's great. That's excellent character description. I love it. Ah, wonderful. All right, so let me queue up. Who'd I got next? Ketan, the Jumboree by Ketan. So Ketan Solanki, Ketan, if you're here in the stream, just say something in the chat so I know you're here. I'm going to pull up your story. All right, so Ketan's. All right, so by the way, something that I was actually really happy and really proud about. So we did a piece of Ketan's story reading previously. No, that's not what I want. We did a piece of Ketan's story previously, and what he did was, and I want to say this was, I think it was from 2 weeks ago. He took the feedback that we had talked about, and then he worked on it, and he gave me a new revision of it. So because I think I've done his story in a couple of different sections. I want to first acknowledge Ketan. If you're here, let me go back to the comments. Oh, perfect. Excellent. Beautiful. Kane solo. Wonderful. So I just want to first off recognizing that having, and this actually goes for all of you, having the courage to put your work out there is such an achievement. So like, I want to really like applaud each of you, because just by showing up, writing, and then putting your stuff out there, wonderful work. Like, it's part of the storytelling process and I love it. And then Ketan, the fact that you're able to, that you took some of the feedback and you ran with it, and now we have a new draft. That's great. That's part of the writing process. I love it. All right. And I think. All right. Okay. And then I got Ketan. I got your story up. Perfect. So we got the Jumboree by Ketan Solanki. Sounds like Kane. Beautiful. All right. So I got you all queued up, my friend. Once again, thanks for sending another excerpt. And I'm going to hop straight into it. Oh yeah, thanks for chilling. As this stream has been growing over time, I've been trying to think of like, okay, well, what's ways to make it as like engaging or something that you could just have on in the background. So we're here. That's actually really cool to hear, Haley. Thanks for that feedback. All right, so let's get to the Jumboree by Ketan Solanki. All right, Ketan, and the timer set. The Jumboree by Ketan Solanki. The reasons behind human misery and anguish are almost alike. The implication, however, sorry, hold on just a second. I'm going to pause this. I forget. I have to turn off Grammarly. I've been testing Grammarly for a few months now to see how helpful it is, but I keep forgetting to turn it off for the live stream. Because I don't want you guys to be focused on Grammarly things. It's not important. Okay. I'm going to reset that and restart. So it should just be Word. Okay. The reasons behind human misery and anguish are almost alike. The implication, however, are different individually. What emerges out of pain varies person to person. Some embrace it as a burden they must bear as a result of their own being good or bad, while others become transgressors. This was exactly the situation with the folks in this narrative. Had it been any other night, the moon would have crept at its routine pace, but not tonight. Tonight, the moon was creeping warily, and contrary to that, the wind was blowing heavily. They seemed to be in cahoots with one another. Though the moon was at its fullest, it did not want to illuminate the gaping abyss down, and therefore it urged the wind to fetch some NIMBY to intervene, as if they were witnessing something. Underneath the celestial and earthly commingling, there led a solitary cottage in the surrounding woods of a town, Trishulgat, to which we would come back later. Outside, which the night was slowly walking into beauty, but not inside, because inside, Yudi was settled near a fireplace, gulping his intense reserve liquor, and he had stopped giving a damn to the beautiful things anymore. His name was really Yogdut, but his friends called him Yudi. The crackling fire was illuminating his sleek face with wavy shoulder-length hair in short intervals. It was otherwise a usual night for others, as aphrodisiac as it used to be, but nor for a Yudi. Yes, night can be called aphrodisiac because it is what people mean by night. It is, in a way, how they perceive it, to satiate their bodily hunger or making progenies so that this civilized society and the creatures who live in it stay forever. In either situation, they need to have sex, and sex has different interpretations. Some die for it, some abstain from it. And in either situation, sex is beyond the understanding. Well, in this night, as it is perceived, having known that Yudi was with no one now, some young hopeful lasses from the region visited the cottage, competing one another for him. Of course, Yudi was loved by everyone. He had quite a personality, handsome by looks and noble by deeds. However, he didn't want to be so anymore kind and noble. One of the lasses, who was the most beautiful among them, dared approach Yudi. She was puffed up with pride over her beauty and thought that Yudi would fall at her feet and beg the alms of her beauty. Yudi, the girl called him in slow, sonorous voice and knocked the door. At first, there was no answer from inside, but the girl showed patience and kept tapping on the door. What is it? Asked Yudi, tired of the thuds. He thought that someone might be in trouble. The girl didn't say anything. Tired of the thuds, he thought that someone might be in trouble. The girl didn't say anything and kept on knocking. At last, Yudi opened the door. I know what Devika had done to you. She was a greedy and cunning girl. I have always hated her and loved you. But you were taken, and I could do nothing except envying her, said the girl, and continued further with all her unsuspected artistry of making overtures. But you did a wise thing, and I want you to do it yet again by letting me in and spend this beautiful night with you. Yudi cast a calm look to her and chuckled. Come and sit over there and stop ogling at me. I'm not going to fall for your lewd gestures. Now listen carefully. You call this love? What do you know about love? This is only infatuation that brought you here. Love is a severe ailment. Just look at me. How do I look? I am all barren, devastated. I am still recovering from the perils of love. You are too young for such business. If there were someone else, he would definitely take an advantage of this moment. But I abhor extramarital copulation. So it is better you go home now and don't take Lantern with you, lest you catch someone's eye. Well, thank you for the preaching. I will make myself understand, but what will you do? Will you still love that cunning girl? Can you do that? Or will you spend the rest of your life not loving anyone? The girl left Yudi thoughtful before leaving. Yudi had no answers. The girl's pride was shattered, and they laughed, the moon and the wind. The girl's question made Yudi restless. He was smoldering from within like embers since the Devika episode. Devika, his wife, was not the only reason for his mental and emotional plight. There were other things too. However, the separation from her was the last straw that nudged him to devastation. He was so tired of the incessant slaps of human predicaments and the severe ailment called love that he mused. We emerge from the soil. We go back to the soil, and the rest is between is love and its turmoil. As past memories came flooding to him, he gulped another goblet of liquor at once. If it had been some years ago, the gulp would have made an obvious grimace on his face, but not now. After these years, his face had gone poker. Rather stone cold. However, it was different tonight. The words he mused were not the result of the past memories, but something else had also happened. He was so overwhelmed by grief, so helpless, that he knelt and yelled as though asking his god, Shiva, why? But he was not asking really. He would, if it had been some years ago, when life was not so otherwise to his hopes. He had made himself understood that there were no answers to this sort of whys from God ever. He then indulged in his routine nocturnal affairs, his usual booze and perpetual directionless pensiveness. Soon, the sky rumbled and heralded a torrential downpour. The nature was shouting its presence in the lament. So, it began in a town of Trishulgat, nestled in the foothills of Himalayas, surrounded by the alpine woods in the far northeast of present India, for time out of mind. The town was named so since it was located at the confluence of three rivers, Siang, Dibang, and Lohit, which configured a silhouette as if the Trishul, trident, an unstoppable weapon of Lord Shiva. The place, therefore, was considered to be holy. These rivers, after the amalgamation, became one and known as the Mother River Brahmaputra. Trishulgat was not a much big town to be acquainted with, but being a major port, was an important territory in the Batra Empire that stretched from north to northeast, conceiving some dark secrets within. It was also famous for weapon forging. People here, including some of the empire's best blacksmiths, were very kind, wise, and hardworking. Some people remained busy in trading commodities, incorporating some fine breeds of horses. The bazaar of the town was noisy and saturated. Some people had their farms and remained busy in farming, while the blacksmiths remained busy in the forges. Amidst all this hustle and bustle, some elderly but far-sighted people were angry with the king Batresh for the first time, as there had been lots of environment-unfriendly activities going on for many days near the bank of the Mother Brahmaputra. Royal army with some laborers was cleaning large patches of the woods, converting the area into a big, plain plateau, due to with so much greenery was doomed, and the king was not even slightly apprehensive about it. Moreover, the elderly townsmen were also horrified by the statement of the elderly soothsayer of the town, Virmaya, "Evil is coming." On a very routine but optimistic note, One day, when the townsmen were all busy in their respective work, and the bazaar and the port and the forges were in their peak hours, a royal crier, in all his demeanor, paraded in at the crying place in the middle of the town. Everyone who heard the bugles and drums gathered around the crying place and gave attention to him as he proclaimed a jamboree and that the trading would remain closed for 3 days. One curious man in the crowd could not stop himself asking out of haste, "Have we gotten our heir to the throne?" "You have no right to interrupt me while I'm speaking," replied the crier arrogantly, and continued, "Princess Lavanya is returning home after completing her martial arts training, and this is the time to celebrate the return of the princess. Everyone has to take part and enjoy." And the cavalry went back with the fading sounds of bugles and drums. The whispers then became louder and spread across the whole town like an epidemic. The people who were puzzled by the strangers in the town and the activities going near the river were then relaxed. Everybody was eagerly awaiting for the event to open. It was going to open on the next day after the proclamation. As per the schedule, the 2-day extravaganza started early in the second prahar of the next day. The morning seemed very exciting to everyone, but not for two rugged companions, Dushyant and Shashank, as they were not going to be involved in any celebration without Yudi, who was more than a brother to them. Both friends had 2 days respite after a long time from their toils at the sawmill and were settled at their camp in the quiet solitude of the woods near the bank of the mother Brahmaputra, where the carnival was organized. Both had somewhat similar looks except the face. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to pause there because I want to have enough time to give you some good feedback. I could tell. So previously, I know we've done 2 sections before, but first off, really, really, really great work. I can tell an incredible change and improvement from the previous readings that I had gone in a couple weeks ago, because I know we've done both that first section with Beauty, and then we did this town section 2 weeks ago. So first off, I'm seeing a huge improvement. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let me get into it because I want to make sure to have enough time. First off, this first section with Yudi was actually really, really, really cool. Yudi, I feel a little bit more connected to him now. And he kind of feels like this, he's this like tough, like scorned kind of lover, but now he's kind of like scorn love. And the theme underneath it is actually really cool and inviting. Once again, I continue to love your use of language in the world. Let's see, this setup was perfect. This pulled me into the story immediately. This was really, really good. Your overall structure in the first part is greatly, greatly improved. My only minor adjustment is making sure every time you start a new paragraph, tab the paragraph. I'm just using the tab key right now, but you can always like set it in your word processor to automatically indent for paragraphs. That's just another common structure thing with formatting. But yes, I love that beginning. That was so cool. You did such a great job of setting up the scene. And I love your use of nature as a kind of like a theme, and almost like nature has its like own presence. And that it's kind of like the presence mixed kind of with the god Shiva. That is so cool. And I don't know too much about that culture. And now it makes me want to learn more. So that's actually really great work. Though the moon was at its fullest, it did not want to illuminate the gaping abyss down, and therefore it urged the wind to fetch some NIMBY to intervene, as if they were witnessing something. Now, I don't know what NIMBY means, but this is such a cool description. I absolutely loved it. And it kind of gives the moon its own personality. And what's that? I'm blanking on the word. When you give an animal a personification, I think personification. But that was really cool. I love that. Let's see, Trishulga, to which we would come back later. That was cool. Really good work because you touched upon where they're going to come back. It's kind of setting up. Shulgut. This part I could go back and forth on this. You could either leave this or take it. On one hand, it builds suspense. Nimbira clouds. Okay, cool. On one hand, it builds suspense. On the other hand, it's like it might not be necessary since we're focused on the story right now. I don't know. Writers, I'd love you to weigh in. What do you think? This might be a subjective thing. Do you think this sentence is necessary in this portion? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. I'm kind of like, because I like the setup of Trishulga, that I think that works. But in terms of saying to which we would come back later, kind of go back and forth on the fence about that one. That might be a subjective thing though. Let's see. Yudi was great. I loved Yudi's character. He was wonderful. He talks about he's kind of like a real like nature earth. You could tell he's been hurt. His look on sex, the night, relationships are great. It's a very unique interpretation and I love it. Some die for it and some abstain from it. This is great. Loved by everyone. He had quite a personality. Handsome by looks and noble by deeds. And I think that's great. So you're setting up his description by how others perceive him, which works. However, he didn't want to be so anymore. Kind of noble. Oh, just for this sentence, Ketan, I would just reword this sentence. However, I would say he didn't want to be so kind and noble anymore. He didn't want to be so anymore, kind of noble. For some reason, from like a sentence structure, that just threw me off for a second. But I get the gist of it. I would just reword that. Let's see, one of the lasses. I think this scene worked great. It's just some girls kind of giving a context to show that he's really not interested in women. He's interested in it sounds like his wife, who there was a thing with. Yeah, thanks for the weigh-in, Haley. It's essentially it's foreshadowing. It is foreshadowing. I was just asking if it was going to pull me out of the scene, but that is a good point. What is it first? Oh, and Ketan, another really big structuring thing. So beyond, you did a really good job on creating on creating more paragraphs in this first section. The other thing to keep in mind is dialogue. And this is for any writers out there. Anytime a character speaks, we have to use quotation marks. There's no like, that's one thing that's like non-negotiable for writers, non-negotiable for storytelling. There's like some storytelling things which are generally non-negotiable because they are have become so mainstream and commonly accepted. Dialogue and quotation marks is one of them. So anytime a character speaks, got to use that quotation marks. If a character isn't speaking, so like you would just change any of it speaking there. I think you do a bit at the end. So this is his thoughts. So anytime a character doesn't speak, essentially this is what he's thinking, which this is fine. We could actually go about this in a couple different ways. So you actually could use this, and you're wanting it to stand out like this, which is fine. I think I could go back and forth on using these. I think because we know it's in his mind, I would actually use italics, but I don't actually think there's a right or wrong way to highlight something like this. Italics is generally like a way for us to tell the reader, I want you to pay a little more attention to this, but it's not dialogue. So that's just a recommendation. But yeah, I think this works. Because you want to highlight that. But yeah, all this stuff, or will you spend the rest of your life not loving anymore? The girl left Yuri. Be thoughtful before leaving. Well, thank you for preaching. I'll make myself understand, but what will you do? Will you still love that cunning girl? Can you do that? I think and it's just a recommendation on dialogue. The last thing that the girl says to Yudi, I would just cut down on her dialogue just a little bit, because right now it sounds like she's hammering the point. Because it sounds like she wanted to come and hook up with him, and he's like, no, I'm not That's not who I am. And then she kind of left. So I would just cut down this part because it kind of sounds like the girl is kind of like, okay, he's not down. So yeah, I would just cut that description down. The girl's pride was shattered. Yeah, because the girl's pride was shattered, I would make her sound more hurt by this. And I would almost say I have like the last thing that she asks him be kind of like sound a little mean, especially if her pride's been shattered. But I think that would give a good setup for Yudi. This was all good. We emerged from the soil. That's good. I like the past, but now after these years, his face had gone poker. Is that a word? When I hear poker, I mean, I think of obviously the game poker. Poker. Let's see, poker. I have to look this up. Description. Yeah, Ketan, I don't think poker is a word. I mean, poker as like the card game, right? Poker as the card game, but I don't think it actually is. The thing about the sentence struck me as an incomplete sentence. That makes sense. For the Yodi thoughtful sentence, I would change it to show, not tell. Yeah, I would agree with that. Atomic. Poker is expressionless. Interesting. Even in my Google search, so essentially what they're doing is they're using it to show like a poker face. So I think just for poker, I would just clarify that as a yeah, that's kind of what I thought too, Charlene. I would just say poker face then, just so it's clear, because that was my initial okay, it's probably meaning poker face. For the Yudi thoughtful sentence, I would change it. Oh yeah, so Atomic, what you're talking about was, so the way that Yudi's thinking after the girl leaves, you're probably talking about showing more than telling. Yeah, so I would just add thoughts, a girl's pride. So I would, by cutting down on this description on the girl's dialogue, Ketan, and then having Yudi give a little bit more thoughts, it's going to let Yudi's actions or his interiority further his character development. Because like this stuff is good. You call us love. What do you do now? Yudi cast a calm look to her. You call us love. What do you do now? It's only infatuation. And then like even Yudi's dialogue here. So he has like this full line of dialogue. So like this right here is all Yudi talking. What I would suggest, because like the dialogue, it does work. It's not a bad piece of dialogue. It's just kind of a lot. So what I would do is I would actually cut this dialogue down. I'd cut it in pieces. And then I would break up the dialogue. I would like cut out some sections and then have his actions show what's happening or how he feels about the scene. Right. So if I was reworking this, I would say, I'll give you a perfect example. Come and sit. I want to make sure that you can actually see this. Come in and sit. Come in and sit over here and stop ogling at me. I am not going to fall for your lewd gestures. So I would do that. And then I would sentence this. So I would say have Yudi say this. And then, because we want to use speech tags correctly, Yudi, and stop ogling. I would say, come and stop ogling. And I think this is how I would do this. Come and stop ogling at me. I'm not going to fall for your lewd gestures. Yudi motioned for the girl to come sit by him as he rolled his eyes. right? So what I'm doing, this is just one example, but what I did was I broke up his dialogue. Come and stop ogling at me. I'm not going to fall for your lewd gestures. Yudi motioned for the girl to come sit by him as he rolled his eyes. So you see, I'm using his description to also show that he's frustrated and that he's irritated. You do a good job of doing that after the girl leaves and before she comes, but I think there's just some good opportunities spread throughout to continue to further build Yudi's character. Yeah, that's a good question. That's one of those things where I would use ogle, but then I'd have to Google it. To ogle. Stare at. So ogle means to stare at in a lecherous manner, a lecherous look. He was ogling. Come and stop ogling at me. I mean, he was ogling a vaguely. Come and stop ogling. I think you could I actually think that you can use ogle in that context. I don't think you ogle at someone, you simply ogle them. Come and stop ogling at me. Oh, I see, with the at. Yeah, I would say come and stop ogling me. Yeah, that would sound more right actually in that example. You see. And then for the poker, the exception would be using gone poker in dialogue with the context that made it understandable. Thus might be an understood expression in some localities, but it's not universal. Oh yeah, for the poker. Yeah, and I think that's just a minor like description more than anything else for both ogling and poker. Yeah, let's see. Or will you spend the rest of your life? The girl left you to be thoughtful before leaving. You do a good job of setting up his background with Devika's wife. You can clearly tell he's upset. I would even, the girl's pride was shattered, and this gives another good opportunity here. Right. And then you see like here, I've broken up his section a little bit more. So now you did a good job of breaking up these sections from what it was previously, but you can probably take it even a step further. Right. So you see now I've dropped this down, and this, I know this is more dialogue. I'm breaking up because I'm doing this live right now. Girl's pride. I love this. This description was perfect. As past memories came flooding back, we touched upon poker. Yeah. And like, this is all good. I think what I would do, now granted, I've blown up everything to a much bigger than it needs to be. I'm going to shoot it back to like 12 times New Roman. Let's do Calibri. So like, this is what it would actually be when I look at it. As a good like school of thought, what I would say is this, I mean, this can work as like a block of text. I would say, Ketan, as a good like a rule of thumb, if you have a large block of dialogue or description like this, I would say ask yourself, is there a way to break it up into two sections, into two specific paragraphs? Because you want to make it as easy as possible for your reader to read. Way better than it was last time. Keep going, I would say. Absolutely. So what I'll do is, because I'm hitting the time, I'll wrap up the critique there. But I know there was some really good, reading. And once again, Ketan, from where the story was at the first time I read it, you did such a great job. Keep up the work. And I really love how a lot of the chat is hopping in to kind of give some additional help. What they're doing is they're giving some really good feedback on some of the use of certain descriptions. And the fact that you're using the type of words like ogle, you're using the words like poker, your word choice is actually a really good word choice. Just the way that you're using some of these words is just fine tuning. So that way, because when your reader is reading it, you want it to be as clear as possible. And if there's any type of reason that it might be confusing for the reader, then it throws them off. So excellent. Really, really great work, Ketan. Thank you for bringing this with me. Yeah, that was awesome. And then let me know. I can always queue up the that second half, the second rewrite for a future reading. Absolutely. So thank you for sharing with that. That was super cool. All right, excellent. The excerpt would be used. This might be an understood. And stop ogling me and come. Yeah. I agree. That would be the way that I would use it as well. Means poker face, poker. All right, wonderful. That was excellent. So let me throw this back up over here. And excellent. So as I queue up the next story, Charlene, you're actually on deck. I'm queuing up your story next, Charlene. And I know I just saw you in the chat, I believe. Yeah, excellent. So as I'm queuing that up, if you found any value from this stream, follow and subscribe. I do these live readings and critiques every single Saturday. Right now, I've been doing 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Kind of seems like it's working out well. So keep dropping by. Free readings, critiques every single Saturday. I also live stream every single day. Monday through Friday, I've generally been doing about 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and Saturday, Sunday, 2 p.m. I'm doing live writing sprints. And then we're also including discussions and ways for you to like give you writing inspiration, or maybe sometimes just writing tips to help you become a better writer. So I'll be here. Feel free to drop by, and by following and subscribing, you'll be notified when I go live. All right, and we're hopping into reading number 3. Awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing the rewrite, my friend. Good luck with the writing process. Another reason that I love doing this is because I love the writing process, right? I could probably read like the same story like multiple times, but seeing it from the rough draft and growing it to that final draft is so cool, because that's part of the fun point of being a writer. I'm probably a weirdo. I like the editing process. And what I'm learning as I'm like meeting more writers is most writers don't like editing. Doesn't seem to be a very popular trend. Awesome. All right, Charlene, let me get your story queued up. Okay, and I got you. That was Unity. All right, and bear with me uno momento as I finish repulling this up. Basically, I'm just resetting the format of it every single time. All right, here we go. I'm queued back up, and here, let me throw up the screen. Editing is just different. I want to touch upon this. So like editing it's a process. And I think the reason that a lot of writers find editing hard is because they have fun brainstorming, they have fun coming up with ideas, and then they finish their rough draft. The rough draft is cool. You wrote these characters, this plot, this world. It's so much fun. But then you go to the next draft and you're like, well, now I have to fix all of it. And I think there's ways to make editing a more fun process. And I think a lot of the times we kind of look at editing as like, okay, well, I know that I have to fix all these things, but then it starts feeling overwhelming because there's generally a lot of things that have to be fixed in a second draft. I think by being clear with yourself, if you're doing a self edit, and breaking up, like, what are the things that I know I need to edit in the second draft, right? And I think if you do a full draft and you just focus on like 2 or 3 things, you would make life so much easier for yourself. If your goal in a second draft is like, you know what, my characters kind of feel flat, I'm just going to focus on character development. And then you do that sort of thing a couple times, I think that's the key to success. But I think because editing can be time consuming, I think that's probably another factor why. I totally get that. I think I'm just lucky. For me personally, it's probably because I've done so much writing, reading, watching media, and just being involved in just creative writing activities throughout my life. Editing comes just a little naturally to me, and I'm just grateful. All right, so let's see. And I got you all set up here. Let me drop that banner. Okay, Charlene. So let's see. You are another Google Doc. So Charlene, what I did, I actually, and this was the same thing I did with Isabella's. I blew up the formatting, I made the formatting larger, so that way everyone can read along. I generally try to make it 18. I changed the font to Comic Sans, so it's easier for people to read, and I also made it larger. So as such, the page count is definitely going to be off, so don't worry about the page count. And then I have to turn off Grammarly, so that way it doesn't bug me while I'm trying to critique. There we go. Perfect. Okay, wonderful. All right, can you guys read it? And we are all set. All right. So this is an excerpt. I believe it was called Sitting. I'm pulling up your email. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Perfect. Yeah, you just say story critique. So yeah, and Charlene, while I'm going, feel free if you want to drop any like context in the chat below. One thing I noticed. Let's see, Atomic. One thing I noticed was that on YouTube. One thing I noticed was that on YouTube, when the stream starts, it's usually about 5 to 10 seconds in your intro. Also, sometimes the stream starts a couple of minutes after it's scheduled to start. Yeah, that's my fault. Sorry, I'll like throw this up. That's totally my fault, Atomic. And in terms of like the start time, I'm so guilty of like between like doing all the things I'm doing for my writing business, I push my like the setup for my streams to the last minute, and then usually like setting it up. I need to do a better job about like starting on time. I'll get there, I promise. I'm only 90 days into this to the live streams, so hopefully by 366 days I'll figure it out. But in terms of it starting a few seconds after, I've asked that myself because I'm streaming from 4 different platforms. So I'm trying to like, okay, do I do it immediately? Do I do the intro? Do I wait a few seconds? I kind of play around with that, but that's really good feedback. You know what, Atomic, I actually originally did the on-screen countdown. One of the reasons I moved away from it was because I learned that it lost new people. It lost intended new people who hadn't experienced me yet, because then they're like, oh, no, I have to wait 30 seconds. I'm off. I was thinking I might create something like fun to watch as like a 15-second countdown. I've been thinking about like something I could create to keep it engaging as a countdown, but that's a really good strategy. Oh yeah, that's no worries. No worries, my friend. Okay. So and once again, I'm here 7 days a week. Y'all don't have to be here every day, but I'll be here on the days when you happen to be free. Okay, so let's hop into your story, Charlene. So Sitting, Becky. All right. Word count 24 to 32. Okay. Becky, time to get up. Becky Simmons roused as the words filtered up the stairs into the room. The sun was up and frolicking outside, but inside her room was quiet. And shrouded in shadows. Becky yawned and answered back, okay, and continued lying in bed, staring at the wallpaper through the semi-darkness. The outline of the patterns was blurry and indistinct, and Becky noticed for the millionth time how the flowers on the wall close to her looked like flowers. but the flowers on the other wall looked like raisins or mud spots. Stretching, she slipped out of bed and pulled on yesterday's jeans and t-shirt. If I can hold my breath till I get to 50, Mom won't yell at me this morning. Becky walked into the kitchen. Her dad had left for work already, and her mother was still in the bathroom. Becky got a bowl, picked out a box of cereal, and made her breakfast. It was a little difficult to manage the full gallon of milk, and some spilled over the edge of her bowl. It dripped off the edge of the table. As she was wiping it up, her mother came in. Becky stepped over the wet spot on the floor, hoping her mother wouldn't notice. Miss Simmons poured a cup of coffee and sat down at the table across from Becky. You come straight home from school today, you hear? No fooling around. I have to work late tonight. Mr. Baker is ordering all the supplies for the new hospital this week. And I have to finish the invoices. I want supper ready when I get home, okay? Only do 3 baked potatoes, and this time wrap them in aluminum foil so they don't get all hard like last time. You hear? Becky nodded, aware of the anger that tinged her mother's instructions. She pushed the cold cereal around in the bowl like so many wooden rafts skimming on a lake. The girl's mother peered at her daughter. Becky looked into her eyes and saw anger. Becky, are you listening to me? Answer me. I can't hear you when you nod your head. Yes, responded Becky, lowering her gaze to the table. Her mother wore her usual, come on, I dare you to give me a hard time look. Becky wished she could just hurry. Becky wished she would just hurry and leave for work. And change your clothes, put on a clean dress, and fix your hair. Put them in the barrettes I got you. I hate that way you have it falling over your eyes, like Dorothy Lamour. Looks trashy. Becky had not the slightest notion who Dorothy Lamour was, but wanted to be like her if she had pretty hair. She washed her dish and spoon in the sink and put them on the rack to dry and went back up to her room. As she searched half-heartedly through her meager supply of clothes, putting on the ugliest dress she could find, she heard the front door slam and knew her mother had left for work. Becky felt safe in ignoring her mother's instructions about the barrettes. She got out her small cedar chest with the carving of the 2 lovely ladies sitting in a small white rowboat. Becky reached into the chest and removed the box of Park Davis throat lozenges. This was her bank. The original contents of the box having been long since flushed down the toilet. 5 cents. She needed at least another quarter. She went through the pockets of her jeans and searched the bottom of the cedar chest, looking for strays. Nothing. Becky dropped the money back in the box and put it away. Downstairs, she opened the closet in her mother's bedroom. Her mother kept her extra pocketbooks on the top shelf. Becky climbed on a chair and reached for one. She had to go through 3 of them before she found any loose change. 3 nickels and a poker chip. 15 cents. Oh well, that was enough. She would just get a small cherry Coke. Becky left the house, locking the door behind her. She put the key in the mailbox and walked up the street to school. If I can spit into Taylor's driveway from the fire hydrant, I'll do good on my spelling test today. By the time she got to Sammy Parker's house, Becky had accumulated a sizable gob of saliva in preparation. But then she could not keep going because a huge slimy toad sat in her path, blocking the sidewalk. Becky froze in fear. Go away, she thought. Get out of here, you ugly, horrible thing with brown, warty skin and eyes in the back of your head. I hate you. Go away. Boy, if you come near me, I'll smear you all over the sidewalk. So help me. I will. Get out of here. Scram. Becky backed up 2 cement squares, glaring at the beast, waiting, daring it to approach. The toad stared back, unblinking, unconcerned, with no evil thoughts in its mind. Then it hopped off into the dark coolness under Miss Parker's rose bushes. Relieved, Becky slowly let out her breath and swallowed, the amassed saliva sliding down her throat with one large gulp. Then she let herself get angry. That horrible old old Toad had ruined it. And now she'd probably do rotten in spelling. Darn that ugly Toad anyways. Becky sat moderately still, through most of the morning, but as the day wore on, she grew increasingly restless until, in arithmetic, she could no longer even pretend to be interested. She sharpened her pencil twice, got 3 drinks of water, and went to the bathroom once. Mr. Hunter was thoroughly annoyed, but the bell rang and class was dismissed. Becky pelted home like the hare racing. Like the hare racing the tortoise. And Becky pelted home like the hare racing the tortoise. She ran upstairs, pulled off the ugly orange and green plaid dress, and put on a clean shirt and jeans. She combed her hair and put in a yellow ribbon. But after surveying herself in the mirror, she decided against the ribbon. Did Dorothy Lamour use ribbons in her hair? Sticking a Kleenex into one pocket and her gold good luck charm into the other, Becky gathered up her money and left the house again. She turned in the direction away from school, walking rapidly downtown. When she got to Reed's drugstore, Becky entered through the double glass doors. Her eyes immediately searched the soda fountain. All the seats at the counter were taken, so Becky had to wait in the magazines, thumbing through the comic books and movie star periodicals. Finally, the big woman with the 2 small boys finished eating and left, and Becky took her place at the end stool. She felt the money in her hand. The coins were hard. They pressed into her skin and made her palm hot and sweaty as she gripped them. Behind the counter, the boy was busy with plates and silverware, but Becky didn't mind the wait now. He looked so crisp and neat in his uniform and black bow tie. A white cap lounged on his head, and a wisp of blonde hair fell over one eye. Becky sat still, clutching the coins and holding her breath. He finally noticed her and came over. Flashing a broad white grin, he fastened his blue eyes on her and leaned over, elbows resting on the counter, and winked grandly. Hiya, beautiful. She more like slumped, back curved outward on the edge of her bed, absent-mindedly, massaging her neck, gazing through the steel bars as she stared blankly at the empty, dimly lit corridor beyond. At one end was a desk, unoccupied and devoid of any accoutrements. The deafening silence reverberated through the loneliness of the area, the expanse echoing and accentuating her interminable isolation. She touched no one, and no one could touch her. A solitary, uniform-clad female figure paced the passageway, periodically adjusting her leather holster, glancing intrusively into each individual cell, on the lookout for something, anything out of the ordinary. It could be something big or nothing at all. Only she knew. Soon the void would bustle with activity. Prisoners lined up, shackled together, anticipating breakfast. Names called out one by one. Adams, Arbuckle, Axelrod, Bainbridge, Barnett, Carter, Cooper, David, Davidson, C. Davidson, R. On down the line. Through the alphabet, each shout countered with a resilient, "Here!" The retort so repetitive that each woman did not feel a singular need to respond. But they did. Whenever the coast was clear, the inmates joked at the situation, surreptitiously nudging one another, making fun of the guard, her face, her posture, her demeanor. Each sly comment brought a smile, a giggle, a snort of contempt, until the sentinel caught on and barked orders to stop. "Shut up, you maggots! No one speaks unless spoken to! You hear me? And I mean no one!" And the woman would comply, adopting stiff poker faces, devoid of sentiment, except for the veiled looks they exchanged, rebellious glances intended to elicit yet more smirks and snickers, unceremoniously disguised as coughs. Rebecca straightened her spine and looked back in her room, returned her gaze to the minuscule space. 48 square feet of boredom. She considered her feet, sheathed in off-white socks and oversized slippers, examining the crosshatch of the brown vinyl straps that fastened her toes to the rubbery sole. This was day 2 of being alone. Her cellmate had been released on Thursday, and the powers that be had yet to furnish a replacement, which was just as well. Becky craved her solitude. She searched under the pillow for her Bible and took it out. Bibles were allowed, but she did not want anyone to know about hers, lest they think she was a Christian, which she was, or at least she hoped so. That belief made her current situation more attractive, enabling her to think she would spend eternity somewhere beyond the dismal world of gray concrete. Unable to resist the pull of freedom, she slipped from the sandals and removed the washed out gray socks, then releasing a tiny sliver of chalk from its hiding place in Romans 8:28, leaned closer to the floor and quickly outlined the contour of her right foot. This action rendered a billowing sense of release, so she stood and performed the same drawing maneuver with her left foot. In this fashion, she shuffled across the floor, right, left, step, draw, step, draw. Soon she had a pattern of footprints traversing the area. Upon reaching the desk next to the far wall, she stopped and pulled out the chair. Taking pencil and paper, she scribbled a poem, one that had been floating around in her head for days. Quelquefois, je suis un pamplemousse, ou encore un champignon. Jamais je ne suis une fleur de lys ou quelque chose joli. Thus, temporarily satisfied, her creative urge departed, and she retraced her steps to gather her belongings before being reprimanded by the guard. Whew. All right, and I'm going to end the reading there so I have enough time to give you some feedback. I know, Charlene, I usually try to get to the end if I can, but I think I had a little too many pages to hit the end. Interesting. Remember that, Nicole. What really interesting story, actually. So I want to first shout out, Charlene. You did your character description, your character development in this story is absolutely incredible. The scenes, you do a really good job of doing a lot more showing for setting up Becky as a character. And I was actually really impressed. I think that the frog scene was really that was a really good choice. Who would have thought that a little girl going to school, being confronted by, it's literally just a frog, created such a great antagonist in this small little scene that really does justice to showing who she is as a character at that point in her life and kind of giving context to just the way that she thinks. That was incredible. Really good work on that. Really, really great work. I would say character development was by far my favorite. Let's see. Let's see. We've got a couple. I like bolted more than pelted. When I hear pelted, I think of throwing. Yeah, I think I highlighted that at one point as well. Stepped over the wet spot on the floor confused me at first. I'd recommend changing to placed her foot on the wet spot on the floor. Stepped over the wet spot on the floor. Or placed her. Stepped over the wet spot on the floor. Placed her foot over the wet spot on the floor. I could go back and forth on that. Stepped over. But once again, if there's ever anything that could confuse one reader, then it's definitely really good. It's really good to keep in mind. Absolutely. That could be a good recommendation. Let's see. So as I hopped into this beginning part, the sun was up in front. I love that. I really love that. So you do a really good job of setting up description in the beginning. I highlighted, if I can hold my breath till I get to 50, my mom won't yell at me. This is such great character description. I love this. Your use of interiority with Becky is really, really good. I love that. You do a good job of setting her up as a teenager. Sounds like. So, okay, I'll come back to that. So, and then you kind of set up how mean the mom is. I think what you could do, Charlene, is you could, let's see, I want to make sure. Yeah, so Charlene, what I would recommend for the mom's character, you do a good job of having the mom come across as mean. I would cut down on her description. I would cut down the dialogue just a little bit and give the mom a little bit more actions to kind of show how how mean the mom is. The mom smacks her hand on the table saying you need to eat this now. But what Becky does is really good. Once again, your description is really cool. She pushed the cold cereal around in the bowl like so many wooden rafts skimming on a lake. That's so descriptive. Like, really great work. That's awesome. It feels like you have a really good idea of who Becky is, and you do a good job of describing it. The mom, you know who you want the mom to be, but you're trying to show us the mom through her dialogue. So I think a little more description would help. Let's see. Responded Becky, lowering her gaze to the table. Her mother wore her usual "Come on, I dare you to give me a hard time" look. That's I love that. That's really good. Yeah, and just give your and like even just by giving this look, this tells me so much about the mom's character more than her constant barrage of all her stuff. This is a really great work. Let's see. And let's see what I get. Also, if Becky was under the rose bushes, would you prefer to swallow the mass saliva or spit it out? I know we probably do this sometimes, but hearing it was a little gross. I think it was intended to be gross, though, by the way, Atomic. I think like her intent was to make it feel gross. I actually thought that she was going to have this like wad of like a loogie saliva in her mouth and then choke on it because of the frog. That's what I thought was going to happen. But you did a good job of setting up like that saliva. I'm like, that's actually interesting. Like, I think that was a really good choice. Let's see. Like maybe when chastising Becky's hair, the mom could flick Becky's bangs off her face in disgust. Yeah, that's a good recommendation. That's a good recommendation for you, Charlene. An idea for just some type of action from the mom. Yeah, and also, so let me clarify, Atomic. I think in the scene, I don't think Becky, because Charlene, you pointed this out, Becky didn't crawl under the bushes. Yeah, I don't think Becky crawled under the bushes. I think the action. So let's get. Oh, by the way, the reference. Like before, I'll go to that sidewalk scene, but the reference to like Dorothy Lamour. That is perfect. That is such a perfect like small thing that you throw in there, and you refer back to it again. Like we don't even know who Dorothy Lamour is, but she's now set up as this like ideal image by Becky's eyes of like what we think what she thinks beauty could be. So that Dorothy Lamour thing, like I love that. You could probably even do that a little more. Like that was really smart. Back and dry. She got the smallest of your chest. This was her bank, 5 cents. Yep, she's looking for the change that comes back. I can spit. Taylor's driveway. I like that because this like shows her character. It shows her immaturity. That's really good. Get out of here, you ugly whore thing. This is so smart. You did a really good job. Yeah, so I think the action is Becky leaves the house. Becky's thinking, or Becky says, I'm going to do good if I can hit the spit on the fire hydrant. She walks to school. She builds up her saliva. A frog is in the way. She has a showdown with the frog. Sun's glowing at the beast. The toad stirred back. The frog hops away. Yeah, I don't think there was a rose. Oh wait, let's see, because you meant so the toad stared back, unblinking, unconcerned, with no evil thoughts in its mind. Then it hopped off into the dark coolness under Miss Parker's rose bushes. Yeah, so the Becky doesn't touch the rose bushes. It sounds like the frog's on the sidewalk, and then the frog just hops away after the showdown. As a side note, Charlene, I hope the frog makes like a return later on in the story. I'm like, I want to know more about this frog now. that was just a cool moment though. Oh, she's a movie star from the 40s. Okay, that's awesome. She kind of has a movie star name, so I'm actually not surprised by that. So actually that's a good question, Charlene. When does the story take place? Because based off some of the dialogue and the language, it did kind of give me that idea. And especially because of the amount of change, she grabs 15 cents to buy a cola, which tells me it's definitely in an older time period, but I just don't know when. Now, granted, I know this is an excerpt. I wasn't sure if this was the beginning of the story or this could be in the middle, but regardless, just make sure to set up the time frame. And you could do that like super easily. Yeah, in the 50s. Yep. So, and what I would do, even from like this scene, is I would have Becky like maybe like reference something or look at something that sets the time period of being in the 50s. Because you do a good job of setting some of these background details, but what is something that like a teenage girl or that like a young teen in her age would have in her? Yeah, so this is the beginning. So what is something that a young girl at her age in the 50s would have in her bedroom? And that would be a really easy way to set the 50s. So you do a good job of referencing it, but I want to make it as clear as possible. So that way the reader doesn't have to guess what time period they're in. She's like 10. I got that kind of like young, very immature. I don't think I could really tell what her age was. Like I kind of go back and forth. I don't think that like her specific age is super important. Other than that, like right now, she just comes across as being as kind of immature. But I think that works for her character. But yeah, I would set up, make sure we're clear on the world. Frog scene is good. The change scene is good. Bulky. There was the pelted. Bulky. Yeah, I mentioned that. Pelted just doesn't, I don't think pelted sounds correct. I would just reword the sentence. But like the hair race and the tortoise, once again, you're used to description. Praise. Wonderful. Dorothy Lamour. Praise. Wonderful. The drugstore scene is actually really is interesting. She got to the drugstore. Seats. Yeah, you do a good job of describing the world. Yeah, you do a good job of describing the world. For somebody who's not familiar with like historical pieces at all, I think just make it easier in terms of setting what time it is. Even if like Becky goes downstairs or she goes into a shop and something's on the news, right? You could always set it up with some time, something that took place at that time. I was like, I don't know who was the president during the 50s. I was like, I don't think I would know that. President's always an easy one. But Becky didn't mind the wait. I actually like this moment with this boy. I wanted to know what happened next. I was like, what? There's this like little like charmer, and he's just like very purposely like flirting with her. So this was actually a really good cutoff, really good work on that part. Eisenhower, yep. Okay, that sounds right. Yeah, so make a reference to Eisenhower. That's an easy one. Or you could even do that as the mom, right? If the mom's like references some like, oh, I can't believe this Eisenhower's doing this again. If the TV's on in the background, or just something. There's so many options. You'll find a way. She sat. Now this, so the changing into the prison scene, this actually threw me off a little bit. I'm like 10-year-old girl, young teen, and now I'm in a prison. I was like, wait, hold on. And then I was like, okay, clearly it's a time jump. It's very clearly a time jump. And then that kind of took me a second. I was like, okay, you're using it as kind of intrigue for furthering this. She sat more slumped. Steel bars as she stared back. I would, so the way that you would set this up, the reason being is because you change the you stop the action in the middle of the action, right when he's about to say something. It leads us to believe that this next section is going to take place with like Becky like after school or thinking about what happened with the boy. Now it's fine that you did a time jump, like I'm good with that, but with that the case, I would actually start the very first sentence. I would start the top of it mentioning the bars first, because I want it to be clear that we're clearly not in a shop, and that gazing through the steel bars, and even like steel bars, I was like, okay, well, could this be like a metaphor for Becky like looking at like the steel bars in her windows? Because you've done a good job of using description. I would make it clear that we're starting off in a prison or a cell or something from the first sentence, because you're stopping mid-action here. That's what threw me off, because I was assuming that we were still at a later point in this. And that's fine the way that you did it, but I would just make it clear for the reader with this time jump. Because then I got the hang of it by the time I was like down here. I was like, oh, individual, cell, solitary. I was like, okay, I'm getting it. Oh, and with the reading of the names, You cut this down to like 3 to 4 names, because reading all the names, like it's unnecessary to go through the names, but by saying that she's calling them out one by one, I would start with like Cooper, David, Davidson C, Davidson R, and starting in the middle, do only 3 or 4, and that still gets the same point across. It's kind of like reminds me of that scene from like Ferris Bueller's of like Bueller. Let's see. And then we kind of go into her expressing herself during her little prison sentence. Search under the pillow. This was an once again, really good character description when she talks about her. They think she was a Christian, which she was, or at least she hopes so. She has this conflict with religion, which tells me that religion is going to be a theme of this story. But it's about freedom. And she's basically chalking the floor. She's trying to be artistic. And this is interesting that she scribbles a poem in French. That's really interesting. I just want to learn more about this character, in all honesty. Yeah, so Charlene, I would say overall, like, really great work, really good start to a story. I'm curious to learn more. I have a couple ideas about the plot, but it's kind of hard for me to give any like plot recommendations because we're so early on into the story. But my sense is that you're going to be jumping around back and forth in time in terms of her childhood, her present, maybe her future. That would just be a guess. But I mean, you did a great job of setting up Becky. You did a really good job of setting up her childhood. I think the only thing that I would then do, I mean, you can't, because you set up the prison. You basically setting up the prison first, and then you're setting her up. I was like, stiff poker faces. I was like that. I recognize the poker faces. I would almost recommend setting up Becky's character, or resetting up her character, Rebecca. Nice. Really nice. Little youthful one is Becky. The adult is Rebecca. Nice call. I would almost recommend setting up a little bit more about her adult character a little early on, like a little bit more description here before the prison thing. Like setting up, we're in a prison, a little bit more about who Rebecca is, and then the rest of it. But that's a subjective suggestion. That's more because you did such a good job of defining the child. Now I want to clearly get a picture of the adult. So yeah, I think that's all that I got for you though, Charlene. Overall, really great work. And thank you for sharing with me. Yeah, that was awesome. Let me see. Yeah, so that was another one I had a lot of fun of. Thank you for yeah, Charlene, you're doing a really great job. Like, keep up the great work. And once again, like I need to get better at reiterating this with every reading. I want your stories to be as perfect as possible. I'm pointing out so many different like things that I see, recommendations, adjustments, and improvements. And I know the community does as well, because we want your story to be the best possible story it can be. So we're always giving things that we see because we want you to be able to like take the feedback, go with it, and then edit it if you want, and then get it to the next draft. Now, the great thing about being a storyteller and a writer is you don't have to take all of the feedback that I give. You don't have to take all the feedback that other people give. What I always recommend with receiving feedback is absorb everything and then take it into your next draft when you're editing it. But remember that at the end of the day, it's your story. You get to do what you want with your story. And a lot of the times with feedback and opinions, there are instances where it's very concrete, like no dialogue without quotation marks. That one's a concrete example. But a lot of the time, feedback can be subjective. And I think it's always really important to keep that in mind whenever, regardless of what story you're working on. So, but yeah, that was awesome. I'm like, definitely send more, Charlene. Feel free to send me an excerpt in the future if you want me to keep going with that story. And I'd be happy to continue off where I left off. Ah, wonderful. So where am I? So we got Charlene. Joelle, you are on deck. Reading number 4 with Joelle. You are on deck, Joelle. So while I set that up, I'm going to throw up. Absolutely, Charlene, anytime. All right, Joelle, I'm throw up your reading. All right, and where am I? All right, and bear with me just a minute, writer friends, as I set up Joelle's reading. All right, perfecto, and I got it set up right here. All right, and I am all set up for the next one. All right, let's see, Joelle, you still in the chat, Joelle? Just say something in the comments if you're still here. All right, wonderful, and I'm going to get straight into it. I'm having fun with y'all readings, by the way. Well, let me just as I'm preparing for this, thank you so much. Let me throw that up. Thank you so much for sharing your readings. I have so much fun reading this stuff, and I get really into the feedback and the critique. I could probably be critiquing for a good hour on some of these. What's up, Mystery? Welcome to the stream. Finally, a podcast with fellow creatives. Absolutely, my friend. You've found us for our Saturday readings and critique show. So kick back. We're just about to hop into another reading. Thanks for dropping by. All right. So Joelle, and here we go. All right. Let me pull up. There's the guidelines. All right. 20 minutes on the clock. Let me a sip of some agua. Okay. Creative Writings by Joelle Zicarelli. I broke reality some years ago. I broke reality some years ago. I created a story where I can go to and exist as a person in my mind. Let me turn off Grammarly. I keep forgetting. Okay. I broke reality some years ago. I created a story where I can go to and exist as a person in my mind. I move between my two worlds at will, sometimes by force. It's like falling into a good book and forgetting where you are for a few hours. It's incredible when I'm not stuck there. The entire ceiling is a pyramid of glass. The light shines on everything here. All shadows have been banished. You can't miss the gigantic marbles suspended midair. They're everywhere. They change color based on something. Feelings? I don't know. Wasn't in the filing cabinet, a room dedicated to organization. Filing cabinets. I can organize and rearrange by date, category, person, whatever I need. I don't choose the drawer. They rearrange themselves, and one pops up in front of me. A paper is handed to me as if by invisible messenger. I'll read it later. There's one cabinet that contains all the details of this place, all the way down to the texture of the paint on the walls. It's totally bananas, but it's also beautiful. I wish I could take you there. Eavesdropping. Just as a side note, we're skipping ahead to a different excerpt in the story, I believe. Eavesdropping. They don't know I'm here. She's talking about the cage incident again. She knows better than to do that in such close proximity. She feels bad. She doesn't say that in so many words, but it's written all over her mind. That's about the only thing I can see from down here. It's dark outside and darker inside. I'd be scared if I wasn't so used to it. She acknowledges what happened, in theory at least. She's stuck on the part where she isn't the one who did those things. She thinks no one believes her. I believe her. She asks him what happened. What made you so angry? They were yelling. They were not mad at us. They just do that sometimes. It's always about themselves. All they do is think about themselves. We can't react at every provocation. People need to be told certain behaviors will not be tolerated. They received many warnings. They made a choice. See, you made me fucking crazy. You better watch it next time. I hate it when he's angry. I especially don't like when he curses. That's why I'm hiding. I'm not even going to get into what'll happen if I'm caught. I hear the engine turn off. They get out of the car. I can breathe again. I might sit here for a while and write a story. Nice. Whew, man, I feel like this was charged with so much emotion. Now, one of these excerpts, Joelle, let me pull you up. So first off, Joelle, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I know I had a little bit more insight as I've gone through one of these excerpts before, but you actually do a really good job of setting up this story and this character, right? One of the things, Joelle, that I really love about your writing is you have a very unique voice and tone, and that is so cool. That is very, very cool to see. It sometimes it can be challenging for writers to have a voice, and when I say voice is generally a mix of word choice, it's a mix of description, it's a mix of structure, it's a mix of sentence syntax, and it's a mix of how you bring them together that creates a unique experience. So you do a really good job of feeling like, even though like there's probably a couple opportunities I could see, you do a really good job of it. It feels like it's your world, and that is engaging and what pulls readers in. Let's see. So I actually really love this as the introduction, Joelle. I think like I'm like almost wondering if this is like the introduction to your story, because it's actually really cool. I broke reality some years ago. I created a story where I can go to and exist as a person in my mind. This is a cool concept. This is a really cool concept. I moved between my two worlds. So because this is essentially setting up that the story, you're probably going to be, there's going to be a character or characters that are interacting with one another within your mind. That would be my guess. And you do a good job of describing it with a book. The entire ceiling is a pyramid glass. You're basically describing the way it makes you feel and the way that it's happening. A room dedicated to organization. And you kind of then further explain it by referencing it as a filing cabinet. And I actually really like that. I think that's actually kind of cool. Wasn't in the a room dedicated to organization, filing cabinets. I really like that you used a filing cabinet as a way of describing that. Don't choose a drawer. They rearrange themselves and one pops open, because everybody knows how a filing cabinet works, and you described it in a way where it's actually further showing the way that this character's mind and their characters are going to work. So that's actually really cool. Really great job on that. All the way down to the texture of the paint on the walls. It's totally bananas, but it's also beautiful. I wish I could take you there. I think my biggest piece of, I broke some reality, I created a story. I think what I would do with at least this little section before I hop into eavesdropping, I want to know who, I wish I could take you. I want to know who you is. Now, I wish I could take you there. Because it almost feels like that you're referencing me, the reader, which is actually kind of cool because it's pulling me into the story of like, oh, it feels like you're talking to me personally as I'm reading it. And that's almost makes it feel a little meta, which I actually think that's kind of cool. I think what I would do is I would add an additional like paragraph. I would make sure that the next paragraph would be revolving around this idea right here. I could take you there, or whatever the next section is in your story kind of further explains who you is. Now, based off what you had shared in the beginning, that you basically created a story where you can exist as a person in your mind. I want to get some type of action and description. I need something that happens in the real world to solidify and see how this, I guess, to see an example of what will happen for you to have to go, for this character to have to go in their mind. I think that's the biggest thing that I want to see next. If I were to read whatever the next section is of your story. But from this section alone, like the section overall is really good. Room filing cabinets I can organize. I think there's just wasn't in the filing cabinet. I don't know. Wasn't in the filing cabinet. Yeah, so I think with some of your descriptions, and this is just from a structure perspective, there's just some structural opportunities. Now, clearly you want the character to sound short. I don't know. You could either use commas. I don't know. I wasn't in the filing cabinet. Or if you're wanting this character to sound short, feelings. I don't know. I wasn't in the filing cabinet. I would do that. But then I would just keep each of their sentences short, but just make sure that each of the sentences still act as at least a sentence. Even if a word like feelings, like that's fine. That's straightforward. I'm fine with that. The point is when your reader's reading it, you want them to be able to connect with your character. And I think they do connect with the filing cabinet. Dedicated to organization. So that's one thing. But yeah, I think that's all that I have for that first section. I like that. And then that eavesdropping. So they don't know I'm here. She's talking about the cage incident again, which clearly that's another part of the story. She knows better than to do that in such close proximity. She feels bad. Say that in so many words, but it's written all over her mind. I think the biggest thing is I think we just need more context. That's really what it is more than anything. I think we need more context in terms of what is the present moment and where is the main character standing right now. Because she's referencing these other characters. And based off here, she's created a world where basically she's in her mind. So this makes me think that she's referencing other characters in her mind. But the main thing that the reader needs at the beginning of this is I need to know what is the present moment for the main character before she goes back, before she's like basically talking with these characters in her mind, right? So for example, a present moment could be I am standing in my room watching as my mom is shouting at me. That creates a present moment. And then as she shouted, her words hurt me and make me feel bad about myself. I retreat into my mind. She doesn't think that my mom is evil. He wants to punch her in the face. That's just random example. So you see, like I need some sort of cementation. Cement, that's not a word. I need some sort of a thing to clarify where's the present moment for me, because all of this description is actually really good. But that way, like you don't want your reader to get lost. That she's talking about the cage incident. Cage incident is interesting. Like I personally, like I know I've read that section, so that's actually cool that you're referencing that. She feels bad. She doesn't say that in so many words. That thing. And this is so interesting. She's stuck. Hey, what's up, Silent? Welcome to the stream, my friend. Let's see. She's stuck on the part where she isn't the one who did those things. She thinks no one's believe her. She thinks no one believes her. I believe her. I want to actually know a little bit more on like why she thinks, on like what was it. She acknowledges what happened in theory. I actually kind of want to know more about like what was the specific thing that she did? Why doesn't she think no one believes her? She acknowledges what happened. See from down here. Yeah, I think what I would do is I would add a paragraph of description here to further clarify. She acknowledges what happened in theory, at least. She acknowledges what happened in theory, at least. She was the one who trapped me in a cage. So I would actually just further clarify that, just a little more details. So that way you don't chance losing your reader. And then I would actually almost recommend giving, if these are other characters in the head, I would recommend giving them a name. I would recommend naming the characters, because if you're switching between she and he all the time, it just chances us losing who we're talking about. And you actually have some really, really cool concepts. And I really want to know, like, I want to solidify which character I'm thinking about. She thinks no one believes her, because that's interesting. Like it's like bittersweet. She asks him what, and then you have this like angry, you have this angry character, and that's interesting. I want to know more about the angry character. All they do is think about, we can't react to every, people need to be told. And you're kind of like, you do a good job of kind of like thinking about him and his actions, which is good. And I think similar to the previous one, she asks, now the formatting was just, that was probably on me for the way it was formatted. She thinks no one believes it. She asks him what happens, what made you so angry. They were yelling. They were not mad at us. They just do that sometimes. With they, I would clarify who was they. So that way it's clear. What makes you so angry? The mailman or the teacher yelled at us while the teacher yelled at us and he punched her. Right. So that's clear. That way we don't get lost. About themselves. All they do is think about themselves. But like, this is interesting. It kind of makes me think that like the male character is kind of like the angry, like he's the one who wants, is like the fighter. Can't react to every provocation. People need to be told certain behaviors that will not be tolerated. They received many warnings. They made a choice. Right. And you see, that's good. See, you made me fucking crazy. You better watch it next time. Oh man, like that's good. That's really, really good. I hate it when he's angry. And she's basically going on about his anger. They get out of the car. I can breathe again. And you see, this is good. So this solidifies that they're in a car. But now I'm getting this on the back end. If they were in a car the whole time, I need the car right here in the beginning. And that's so easy of like, I hear the engine drumming as I'm looking out the window and the car's scenes are moving by as we're driving. Something very easy. Solidify where they are in the present, because you mentioned that in the past. I was like, oh, that's actually cool to know. I can breathe again. I might sit here for a while and write a story. And I love that. Like, I know the main character is a writer. That is so cool. Have them be writing a story in the beginning or thinking of a story. Like, I love that, Joelle. That's so cool. Yeah, I think that's all that I got for you. So really it just focus on just giving a little bit more descriptions and clarifying the present moment. And then let me see the present moment, and then who is talking about who, and clarifying the character references. I think that would help out a lot. But like, your language, the world building is, keep up your style, Joelle. Keep writing more. That's awesome. Excellent. So that is all I got for you. Thanks for sharing that, Joel. I appreciate you. All right. Where am I at? Let me hop back over into the chat. Yo, what's up, Silent? It looks like I got Silent and Sean and Joelle. I just went through, Joelle, I just did your reading. So it sounds like you missed it. So what I would recommend is after the stream ends, I'm going to time code the chapters. So that way you can watch it on the replay and you can skip back to the section that I just critiqued. Yeah, totally. No, it totally happens. Especially if you're watching this like and you're doing other things, like no worries, that happens. But we did some good readings. We did some good critiques on it. But let's see, Silent and Sean. Yeah, so guys, welcome to the stream. Silent, every Saturday I do a live reading and critique show for the community. Like I have so much fun doing it. If you want, let me throw up the banner. Yeah, if you're ever wanting your story read, there we go. So if you're ever wanting your story read, like an excerpt of it, you can send me an excerpt, 1 to 5 page double space through a Google Doc or through a Word file to that email. And every Saturday I do readings and critiques. So feel free to drop by any Saturday. It's always been really good. We've had some really good stories so far. So that's always super, super fun. Let's see the comments. And then Sean, let's see, bummed I missed some of the readings, but going to go back later and watch. Today is just crazy with trying to manage my time. Love following these storylines. See you next week. Thanks for dropping by, Sean. I appreciate you. I appreciate you stopping by. It's actually kind of cool, Sean. You speak to something where like I want to say I've been doing this live reading show for maybe about a month and a half, maybe approaching 2 months now. And some of the repeat stories where we're getting more parts of the storyline, it's actually kind of cool to see the story developing and seeing portions of the story come to life. So like, I completely agree with that. Excellent. All right, where am I at? So I am at 2-4. Okay, onwards and upwards to the next one. Number 5, Stephanie. Stephanie, you are the next one on deck. To be the hunter or to be the hunted, of which I know we've gotten a couple excerpts of your story. All right, so while I cue that up, let me plug this. By the way, if you are enjoying the stream, don't forget to like it. Tap that like button. Let me know that you enjoyed it. Hit that like button. There we go. If you found any value from this stream, tap that like button and show some love. Let me know that you enjoyed it, and let's show the algorithm that we're getting some value out of this. So smash that like button. Wonderful. And then where am I? Gotta pull up the right screen. Perfect. And I have to check my email as well. So, by the way, I'm going to plug my where is it? Website. Do you need a professional editor? I do. Beyond the free stuff, I do some editing services as well. You can check it all out on, I'll throw this up, on my website, The Creative Ghost. You can check it out here, website, The Creative Ghost. It's always a work in progress, trying to make it look as professional as possible. But if you're looking to hire an editor for your next story, or you're looking for a writing coach, you should go and check it out. All my prices and stuff is listed here. I work with all types of writers, and I'd be happy to help you bring your next story to life. So if you're looking for something which is more like a deep dive, you need something that's more dedicated one-on-one time, check out my website or message me for more information. All right, wonderful. I wanted to make sure I plugged that. And Stephanie, let me hop into your story. So Stephanie, if you're in the chat, just say something that you're still here. Okay, where was I? All right, and let's see, bear with me just a moment while I pull Stephanie's story up, and I get my timer and I reset it. Perfect. Awesome. So I got it all set up here. And by the way, once again, thank you all for continuing to comment and critique as we're doing the readings. I absolutely love hearing some of your other opinions. And I think you're really helping to give and provide value to any of the stories that are being read. So thank you again. Keep it coming. All right. So there's my critique guidelines. Here's the story timer. If you haven't been following along on previous Saturday live streams, I would suggest go and check out a couple of the previous ones. We've gone over a couple excerpts of Stephanie's story now. To be the hunter or to be the hunted? Okay. All right. Chapter 3, The Back Alley Killer. Age 15, still quite charming. 5 foot 8 inches, lean with muscle, pale skin, blue eyes, short brown hair. Kill 2 and 3, year 1993. Year 1993. I continue to watch my kitten from a distance in case any other guys paid unwanted attention to her. I noticed that since my first kill was discovered, most of the other predators in town moved away. They mostly have been afraid of facing the same fate. And to be honest, the papers did not sugarcoat the kill and went into full detail of the monster's crimes. When I read the article, I was shocked by the things that this monster had done, and not for 1 second did I regret killing him. But I should have planned things better, and I should not have used myself as bait. And it's a miracle that what he did to me didn't traumatize me, but it did leave me with my back and wrists bruised. Or maybe it did in a way, because now I can't get hard unless I have violent thoughts. God. Another thing about my first kill that made me mad was how long it took for the body to be found. The police finally checked the house after about a month because I may have made an anonymous call to the police station about some of his crimes. For 2 months after the body was found, there was, of course, an investigation into who made the call. The police tried to get the caller to go forward and explain what happened, that they wouldn't get in any trouble for the crime, because it was obvious that it was self-defense. I mean, I could have come clean and told them it was me, but if I was planning on taking out more people like my kill, it would be harder for me to fool others if they knew I was or what I looked like. Plus, I didn't want to risk being targeted by anyone that knew my kill. That must come looking for revenge on me or my loved one. I didn't spot my next kill until almost a year after my first kill. He was following the same kind of patterns of the first one, and of course, he had to target my kitten as well. And in a year, my kitten got even more beautiful. And I hated how this guy, and I hated how this guy was looking at her. He was more daring than kill number 1, because not only did I see him watching her, anytime he saw her at school, he would corner her and friends and talk to them in a way I didn't like, or he would touch her arm when talking to her. My kitten was so innocent and didn't realize what he was doing, but I did, and I didn't like it. I knew this kill was going to be harder than the first one, mainly because he was a respected teacher, and some believed him to be a pillar of the community. What a load of crap. If only the community knew what he did behind closed doors, like how he took pleasure in beating and raping his young daughters. One of the girls was in my year. I've seen the bruises, but her father would tell the school and that she just clumsy and she fell, and she falls all the time. I felt her pain, and I'd be damned if I let the father hurt my kitten like he hurts his own family. One afternoon at school, I caught one of his daughters outside, and I walked up to her. When I walked up to her, she looked at me a little afraid, but I think she were more afraid of her father than me. Hello, Mel? Can I talk to you about something? I asked her. What do you want? I shouldn't be talking to you. If my father sees you talking to me, she said, looking around in case her father was around. He's not around anymore. He's not anywhere around right now. I may have locked him in his classroom. He'll be in there for a while. You're safe from him right now, and I want to help you and your sister get free of him, I told her. If only you could help us, but there's nothing you can do. Someone tried to help us once, and look what happened to them. My father accused them of hurting us, and now they'll be in prison for 20 years. I don't want anything like that to happen to you. You've always been so sweet to me, she told me, and as she started to walk away. Please, Mel, hear me out, I said to her. There's nothing left to say. If you try to accuse him of anything, he'll just get off. He already pays the police to look the other way. It's just gonna end badly for you, she told me, and I'll admit that I didn't know he was bribing the police to cover his crimes. What if I told you I wasn't planning on accusing him of anything, and that I was planning on taking the law into my own hands, like I did a year ago, he said to her. That was you? The police made it sound like one of the guy's victims killed him, she questioned me. One of his victims did kill him. I'm not going to tell you everything, but I was trying to stop him from going after someone else, and I offered myself as bait to get him off his guard, and made a mistake, and I ended up chained to a bed, and just by luck, I made it out of there. But I could have easily died in that basement, I said to her. What if you make that mistake again? What makes you think you can outsmart my father? And you know how popular and powerful my father is. How do you plan to get away with killing him? She asked me. Well, for one, I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm hoping you can tell me everything I don't know about him. And don't worry about me if I'm caught. At least he won't be able to hurt you or your sister again, I said. Whew. All right, and end the reading. I can always, Stephanie, I can always tell with your stories, because I know I'm doing it's a serial killer anti-hero piece. How much more I really try to get into that character's mindset for it to be as believable as possible. But anti-hero pieces are always really fun. And I know I share this with your past piece, but it's always a lot of fun. This always reminds me of that one TV show, You, which once again, it continues to remind me of that idea. It's like there's another Dexter. You and Dexter are the two that really come to mind, at least in terms of TV shows. Let me think. So we have the same character from last time, and I know in the last section that you send, you're referencing that previous scene where he had tried to attack the previous guy before the kill, and clearly he escaped, which is cool to know. And this is always the hard line with anti-hero pieces, right? Because your hero is essentially a serial killer, but because they're doing it for with a sense, a system of justice, that's the defining trait. That's the save the cat. That's the reason that we're still rooting for them, because they're doing it for the right reason. Even if they're killing in itself is the wrong reason, but they're doing it for the right reason. So I'm continuing to appreciate that his morality hasn't changed and his character is still very consistent. Let's see. So Ketan and any other guys paid attention. and wanted attention. You kind of do you're sticking to the same thing with kitchen with his kitten, which is good. And you're basically kind of referencing what had happened previously. Regret killing, I should have planned things better and should not. I think that's actually smart that he's kind of like learning from this mistake. I think from just a structure, this is it just blown up for reading purposes. So structurally, that's probably fine. Leave me with my back and wrist bruised, or maybe it did in a way because now I can't get hard. It's like clearly right. And it goes to show, right, that his sense of killing and it's so mixed up in his sexuality that that's an integral part. So I think that's interesting. I think I remember having him had referenced pornography before as well in a previous section. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I see Haley referenced said, I feel like that author uses the word said a lot when indicating who's talking. I recommend trying to come up with other words that help indicate the tone of the voice. So I think when you're using said, I'll get to that section in just a second, but when we use the same type of word multiple times, it can easily make a reader lose interest, which is why with he said, she said, we want to find other ways for them to speak, right? So it'd be one thing for he said, let's see, I'll jump to a dialogue section. Where was it? And I mean, you said you asked her, let's see. So, well, what do you want? I shouldn't be talking to you. If my father sees you he'll, she said, looking around in case her father was around. So actually, and just so you know, when you get cut off, I'm pretty sure that you do one of those for interruption. But you could also do this as, if my father sees you talking to me, she looked around in case what's another good alternative for said? I could say, she talked to me, she whispered. Right? So now you said instead of she said, now I'm using she whispered, looking around in case her father was around. And now that already breaks up the repetition of the he said, she said, just by replacing a word. Generally, you can use speech tags. Sometimes you don't even have to use the speech tag if it's obvious who's speaking. Sometimes you do. It just depends on where you're at. But that's just really mixing up the word choice more than anything. Let's see. So in full cost, and to be honest, bears do not sugarcoat. Oh yeah, I was just saying that I like that. I liked how you kind of refreshed us on what had happened previously. So that was cool. And this is interesting. So it's this backstory of how he's pissed off that it took the police so long to find out about the killer. It makes me think that he kind of like laid out like more and more like breadcrumbs, and the police just suck at their job. And this is like a common trope with this type of story. So I actually like that. Into who made the call. Yeah, and that's good. Like his reasoning is actually very sound. His reasoning really, really works. I don't want to risk being targeted by anyone that knew my kill. So like that's actually really, really good. The police tried to get the caller. I think, yeah. So I think the only thing is for both these paragraphs. Let me just break them back down. I want to see how they look from like a normal. Perspective for a second. So if I bring them back down, I'm just curious. Yeah, I think Stephanie, as a side note, I might just break up these two large bodies of dialogue, or these paragraphs into two separate paragraphs. And that's just for reading purposes, make it easier on your reader's eyes to get through. But in the content works well for me. I'm fine with the content. And obviously you're seeing grammar is just catching spelling errors. But I know something that Stephanie shared is that she does a lot of her writing through speech to text. And I think that's actually super cool. It's something I want to try. So that's definitely a good note. And I'm going to blow that all back up. All right. Where else? So let's get to reformat real quick. All right, let's see. An example I give is when he's trying to keep the girl from walking away. You could say he pleaded instead of using. Yeah, so he pleaded. That's another good example. Let's see. And then atomic reference, the paragraph could also just be shortened to she looked around. The paragraph break makes it obvious that the speech is hers. Yeah, so they're both talking, Stephanie, clearly about the dialogue scene. I think because your description of what's going on with the teacher and all that is well done. And my only suggestion is just break it up into smaller paragraphs. But I actually agree. I think the biggest opportunity is the dialogue scene. So one afternoon at school, I caught up with the daughters and I walked outside. This is fine, the way he's talking to her. Hello, Mel, can I talk to you about something? I asked her. And it's like, it's fine if like the first time I asked her, like that's fine. But it just makes it so it feels a little bit more interesting with more varied word choice. I told her, and then even then, he's not anywhere around right now. I may have locked him in his classroom. He'll be in there for a while. You're safe from him right now, and I want to help you and your sister get free of him. He's not around right now. I may have locked him in his classroom. He'll be in there for a while. You're safe from him now. Wow. Yeah, I mean that works, but essentially you want to use the speech tags to add a description, add description and action. Or speech tag and description or action. If only you could help us, but there's nothing you can do. Someone tried to help us once and look what happened to them. My father accused them of hurting us. Now they'll be in prison for 20 years. I don't want anything like that to happen to you. You've always been so sweet to me. So let's see what saying that could also just be shortened. She looks around. Atomic. It seems where there are only two individuals engaged in conversation. You can often omit the tags completely if it's clear. Yeah. And that's actually very true. So because it's obvious that it's just the two of them, I think once you set up, there's speech tags in the beginning ones, you can probably just cut the rest of them. As long as it's clear. I like having speech tag. I like adding a speech tag every other one personally, but I use the speech tag as furthering action as well. I like to use different types of speech tags and then include action. So it feels like you're getting a clear sense of what's going on while they're talking. But that's just a personal subjective choice on my part. So I think my biggest thing with this, their conversation, I want to question the logic of it just a little bit. So first off, I think I just need a little bit more explanation. So clearly they have a relationship, or not a relationship, but they have a connection. They're friends. I think I just would need a little bit more explanation on how they find the same kind of how. Hey, this guy who's more during. I knew this guy was going to be Yeah. So what I want to see, Stephanie, is I need a little bit more setup for your protagonists and the daughter's connection. How do they know each other and how well do they know each other? The reason being is because he basically comes straight out with being like, hey, I see that your father beats you. Clearly bad man. We need to get rid of him. And she's like, okay, no, you can't. He's done this. He's basically corrupt AF. He's a bad man. All right, like that part's fine. But then what he does is he goes a step further and he's like, all right, well, I'm going to work around the law and I'm going to kill him. Like that's a lot. That's a huge jump. And right now there's a question of believability because I don't understand their relationship that well. If the antagonist and the girl or the daughter are very close and they have that relationship, then that's fine. But because it's not established, at least at this point, this excerpt, it's for me, it's a sense of like, oh, well, why would he's basically telling somebody who could potentially like turn him into the police or turn him over to her dad if she's scared enough. Usually in stories like this, the anti-hero, the serial killer, will only share that they're a killer if, one, they're forced into it, B, their emotional attachment overcomes their need to stay safe. So I think that's the only thing. I think the scene could actually still work if he doesn't actually talk about killing, but he's still saying like, hey, I will go above. I'm going to go around the law to take care of your father. And it could be something that you could actually make it more like, what's the word? You can make it more like subtextual and make it more as an undertone as compared to him saying like, all right, well, I'm going to kill your father. Like, let's take care of that guy. Because then him also like explaining the last, like everything that happened, that he was the one who killed the previous killer. Like now he's basically given this daughter all the stuff for her to potentially screw him over, right? And because you have set him up to be a pretty smart character up until this point in time. So I think I would just rework some of the dialogue and the wording for him, for what he's sharing about what he's done, to be a little bit more subtextual, for him to hold cards back. Or if you feel like you do, like if it's important to the story and you want the daughter to know everything, then there should be a reason. Like, what is his reason? Ask yourself this. What is the reason that he's telling her everything? Now, I know he's trying to convince her like, oh yeah, we need to take care of your dad. Like that agrees with her, but I need a further reasoning of like, he doesn't actually need to share all of his background to convince her that to off her dad. Like that's not even necessary. He just needs to like, because she already fears her for her life. She's already scared of her dad. Like that in itself is evident. He simply needs some sort of explanation or reasoning to have her trust him more than she fears her dad. So I think that's my only, I think that's my biggest comment for the dialogue scene, just to make it clear. Because like I see it, and I see you even mentioned he's not around right now. Like you show her being afraid of him, that's actually very clear. I'm gonna try to look what happened. My father accused him of hurting us. And like I like that. Like this is good. If only, but there's nothing. Someone tried to help us once. And like even then you could shorten this. Someone tried to help us once, but my father accused them and they ended up in prison for 20 years. I don't want anything like that to happen to you. You've always been so sweet. That's fine. Dialogue tag. Please, Mel, hear me out. Yeah, it's like this isn't even necessary because clearly he's the one talking. But if you wanted to add, like, let's say you do like the dialogue tag, you want to add like some action. Please hear me out, Mel. I pleaded as I grabbed her gently by the arm, right? Dialogue tag, but you're using the dialogue tag to further the action. That's what I love to do that with my storytelling, but that's personal stylistic writer's choice. There's nothing left to say. You try to accuse him, he'll just off you. He'll just get off. That's good. I'm just going to end badly for you, she told me. That's good. Yeah, so I think this is where the reasoning for me is becomes questionable, like I did a year ago. But like I get that he also says like I'm not going to tell you everything. But I think the question you want to ask yourself is like, is that if he tells her about his kill a year ago, isn't that now some type of like evidence that she could use against him and turn him in if like things go sideways? I think the only reason it feels to me that he would share this is if there was something happening to him where he like something like what if they were being held up at gunpoint and then he had to explain to her, because right now I think they're just outside of school. Yeah, because they're outside of the school right now. And then that's the other thing. Like, so he's having this really intense conversation where he's explaining, like, hey, I'm the killer and I do this, like, this is my thing. But like, what if other students are walking by? So like, I think this is a really good opportunity of like, hey, let's like, we need to talk over here, or making it just a little bit more secluded. Because what if somebody walks by and overhears? Now he's screwed and the police are going to come capture him and send him to jail. Like, that would suck. What a bad way to be caught. So I think that's just another for the setting just to be aware of. And like, once again, like, I think you can make this work. I think we just need some more establishing details to make it for the why to be important, especially if you want her to know everything as part of the overall um, plot of the book. And even then, like, with outside of the dialogue, like, use it, give us some more action, some more descriptions of the girl, right? I want to know like a little bit more about her beyond that she's just this girl who's afraid of her dad, right? Like, give us some more descriptions and detail. And I think that would really help, because I'm getting an image in my head of like, he comes out, he's like, yeah, this is me, I'm the killer. And she's like scared, but she knows him. They have a relation, they have a connection. And she's like, seems like this young innocent girl is being clearly brutalized by her father, which horrible. Father needs to be offed. We need to send that deal with that character. So yeah, that's all the feedback that I got for you, Stephanie. That's all. Once again, really good work overall in the story, and I really, truly, truly want to commend you, because this is a hard story to. This is a difficult character journey to do well. Antiheroes, anytime you write a story on intense subject material that is hotly debated, so anything that involves cruelty, anything that involves taking away from another person's rights, anything that involves anything towards children, you're doing a story that could spark controversy or debate, but it also has a niche for it as well. So I think it's hard to do it. And I think you're doing a really good job of setting up the overall story for this character. So good work. I'm eager to hear more. And I hope the feedback here helped you. Community, also, thank you for sharing your feedback as well. All wonderful feedback. All right, excellent. And then let's see where we are at. Hey, what's up, Sion? Welcome to the stream, my friend. Welcome. Yeah, usually our Saturdays have been pretty populated. We've actually had some good turnouts on Saturdays with all the readings we've been doing. So, all right, and let's see where we are at. So we just got through Stephanie's. All right. So I actually, I'm looking here. I have like 4 more excerpts. All right, guys, my voice is burnt. I need to call it. All right. Okay. So if you have another excerpt pending, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add your excerpts to our readings for next weekend stream, because I want to make sure that I can actually give you quality readings and quality feedback. And I kind of start feeling around that 3 to 3.5 hour mark. I kind of hear my voice going a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to wrap that up. So I'm going to wrap up the readings for the day because I'm a little burnt, but I'm so glad that so many of you have joined the stream. I'm curious, like, I hope some of your guys' stories and storytelling is going good today. I hope you guys have been getting some good like work this week with some of your storytelling. We did the writing sprint in the beginning, which was super cool. Let's see, where am I at? So all right. So by the way, if you need help getting into the writer's mindset, and let's say you're struggling and you're trying to figure out like, okay, what are some tips to help me just get into the right mindset? I actually just threw up a video on my YouTube channel. You should check it out after this stream. I'll show up the thumbnail. Awesome. There you go. Perfect. The writer's mindset. It's actually my first collab video with a writer's corner, another writing YouTube channel. So you should check it out. This is just a thumbnail, but I threw up the video shortly before the stream. But yeah, if you have want to learn more about the writer's mindset, just some strategies to help you out. I was pretty happy with how the thumbnail and the video came out. I'm kind of playing around with different like ways of making the thumbnail stand out. But yeah, go check it out. Should be pretty helpful. And I don't like that. So that's on the writer's mindset. That is awesome. And then let's see what else do I got for y'all. All right. And if you found any value from this stream, tap that like button. Show me some love, show the algorithm some love, and let me know that you're getting value out of this and that you enjoyed some of the readings, the critiques, the writing sprints, the discussions, anything and everything in between, because I enjoy doing this. All right. And then let's see, for tomorrow's show. So as a lot of you all know, my Sunday stream is also at 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. My usual banner, which it's actually on my to-do list. I got to update these banners. It's like, I'll be getting to my banner update at some point soon. So tomorrow I'll be back 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Come join me for some more writing sprints and some more writing discussions. All right. And by the way, what, that doesn't look good. Yeah. Also, let me know. I threw up. I have YouTube. There, I keep like switching screens because I'm being indecisive. By the way, if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel itself, you should go onto the community tab. And the poll thing's not working. Sometimes it doesn't show the pictures on my screen, but you should go check out this poll. I'm trying to create more videos and more content to give you guys value for things that you're looking for. So if you haven't seen it yet or haven't voted, go into my community tab under my Kauffman's Corner YouTube channel and vote. Let me know what types of videos that you want to see. So these are more for the videos I'll be doing. I'll probably be doing another poll more for the live stream next week, but I want to get more of your feedback on like what, if I'm going to invest time into doing things, I want to do things that are going to bring you the most value. So all right. That is all that I got for you, writer friends. I'm going to call it a stream and wrap up for the day. If I didn't get to your excerpt today, I'll message you and we'll have it set up for next week's. And then once again, that's why I always recommend the earlier you send me your excerpts, the sooner it gets to the front of the queue. I do a first come, first serve for reading submissions. All right. That is all that I got for the stream today. I hope that we've gotten some good creative writing inspiration, vibes, and stuff going on. Remember, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Till tomorrow, my friends.